You remember where on that USB stick, by the way, about the USB stick, there was a tiny bit of confusion yesterday. Keep the USB sticks. They're for you to keep. We will need them today because this is when we create all the Excel files and we got to have a place to put them. So you go on that USB stick. If you don't have one or if you put it back in the box, there's a box up here. Raise your hand. I'll throw one to you. But those are for you to keep. On that USB stick, remember the useful training links document. I'm just going to kind of keep that one open so I can easily navigate back to the various pieces of documentation that we use. And all of these are available online. I've got links. The only two that aren't are the two PowerPoint decks, but the training videos, the CMS detailed documentation, that's probably the one that you may find most useful to kind of refer to. Oh, thanks, Jim. Most useful to refer to as we go through today. So I'm going to keep that CMS documentation file open here. And then the other thing to keep in mind is we have all of your data that we've been working on, the sample data on the C drive. If we look on the C drive, remember we created that folder called SkillsCMS, and in order to launch the application, we're simply using the file called SkillsRegistration_program. Double click that guy and it'll have you back up and running. A lot of folks like to drag a copy of that file, not a copy, a shortcut to that file off onto your desktop so you can easily get to it. Remember, it's best not to put a copy of the file anywhere else because remember, we're on 40.1 and we may have 40.2, so don't make a copy anywhere outside of the SkillsCMS folder, but you can make a shortcut to it. If you're not familiar with how to do that, I'm just going to show you real quick how to do it. I have the file here, Skills Registration Program. I'm looking on the C drive under the SkillsCMS folder, right? And this is the file, SkillsRegistration_program. I'm going to use the right mouse button, the right-hand mouse button, right click and drag that out to the desktop. And when I let go of the right mouse button, notice I have options, copy, move, or create shortcut here. That's the one I want, create shortcut here. And now I have a link basically to that file right on my desktop, and I can double click that real easy anytime to get it to launch, okay? All right, so I'm back here, and this is where we are. The next thing we want to talk about is scoring options. So remember yesterday we got all our data cleaned up, we assigned the contestant numbers, we printed our name badges, we made packets for the for the advisors, we made packets for the chairs, the technical committee, judges, everybody's got all the information they need. We made last minute changes, we dropped some people, we did everything we need to do, and now we're ready to actually start the conference. We need to create a bunch of scorecards for those tech chairs to use. And there's two options for handling scoring in the system. The simplest option is manual scoring, where we just use sheets of paper, right? You give the sheets of paper out to your tech chairs and they handwrite on there either ranks. They can say, hey, here's first, second, and third. We saw those reports. Or they could write the total points that each contestant gets. When they start bringing those sheets of paper back to you and say, here's my scores, we can just handwrite them. We can take those handwritten sheets and type them directly into the system. That's the manual scoring option. And with that manual scoring option, you can either type in the total score, point values, or you can just type in first, second, and third. Let's take a look at how that looks. In the CMS, there's a button there that says manual scoring. If I click that manual scoring button, there may be some stuff here already. We may need to clear some of this out. There's a button up at the top. When you first come in here, generally this will be empty because there's no scores. I want you to just click that button at the top, number one, that says load contestants. Load contestants. And that's just going to wipe out all the contestants. It's going to clear out whatever junk is in there, hopefully. And then we'll have all of our contests loaded with a place to type in a score or a rank. That seem okay so far? Now the way this thing works is there's a little drop-down list here on the left where you can choose a locate contest, it says. Locate contest. If I click locate contest, I can pick anything I want, like let's say dental assisting. If I choose dental assisting, I'll see the scores or the ranks for all my dental assisting contestants. Work okay? Remember, at this point, for manual scoring, the judges have just brought you a sheet of paper, and the only thing on that sheet of paper is contestant number 1048 has 820 points, and contestant 1114 has 380 points, whatever your numbers are. So just type some fake scores here in the total score column, You just type them and then press tab to move from one to the other. You can type these in really quickly. Just tabbing from one to the next. And we're done. So if your judges bring back total scores, you just type them in. There's a couple of buttons here on the top you'll see for sorting. Like right now, they're sorted not alphabetically, they're sorted numerically by contestant number, because that's how most of the reports come out, right? If your judges hand you a sheet, it's probably sorted by contestant number. But you can also click sort by name if you'd rather see them sorted alphabetically by name. And there's a button that says switch name if you'd rather see them sorted alphabetically by first name instead of by last name. So literally, you just type in the scores, and notice these buttons at the top. Tabulate winners is number 2, and the score report's number 3. I'm going to click tabulate winners. It'll tell me the winners are tabulated, and then it automatically selected dental assisting there, because that's the contest I was working on. When I hit score report, I have winners. And now I can see, based on whatever scores my judge came back, I have a gold, silver, and a bronze medalist. Super easy. The other option is ranking. So there's a button there that says, all right, so let me switch to a different contest. I'm going to try, let's say, precision machining technology. I've only got a couple of people here. And maybe this is one of those contests that's so small they don't really even give me scores. You know, the judge, he might even just text me and say, hey, the first place winner was Lake Central, the second place winner was Zionsville, right? So I can just change this from enter scores to enter ranks and just put in Lake Central was 1. Zionsville was 2. So you don't even have to get detailed scores. Remember, one of the reports we printed out yesterday was that manual rank score. They just hand write on there what the ranks are, and you're done. You just type that right in. Just the total. That's exactly right. They'll only get the totals. And if you do ranks, there's really nothing. They just know you get gold medal and bronze, but you don't know who did what.
Thank you.
Yep.
You can't go back and change it and go back and put in the total scores later.
You could, sure, yeah. If you were like in a hurry and said, hey, for now I'm in a rush, I'm just going to put first and second, and then tomorrow or a week or two later after you're done with the PowerPoint and you've got a chance to catch a breath, you can come back and say, you know what I want to do? That's what this button for clear contest is. If I was in a hurry and I just put ranks and then a week later I get the total scores, I can clear that contest. And then I can say, hey, what I really want to do is put in the scores of 875, whatever, and 629. So now I'm in much better shape. So whatever you really want to do is fine.
This doesn't change anything.
Well, it always ends up changing something. You got an angry advisor calling you, right? So the basic concept with this manual scoring is you just pick a contest, tabulate the winners, and hit the score report. Not much to it. Go ahead.
What I'm saying is, if we decide we don't want to use manual scoring, we want to go back and use the other scoring.
Yeah, that'll work too. Yep. Let's try that. We'll pick one here, and then we'll put in some manuals. Like we already did dental assisting. Let me just jot a note down. We'll try dental assisting in a minute. If you did another one, just jot down what you did, and in a minute we'll do a scorecard for dental assisting. What Keith's talking about is, now that I understand your question, Keith, sorry about that.
We did manual scoring because there was a problem. We did it quick because it was a district contest. We only got an hour to get scores in.
Yep.
And then after we got back to the office, we fixed all the problems. We got rid of manual scoring, but they wanted to see how they scored on each individual item that they performed on.
That's right. So I've manually forced some scores in just to get it done. And then subsequently, I have time to come back and work with the judges and figure out what they did wrong and get the Excel scorecard created. You can use this to get the urgent need of your PowerPoint presentation done. And then once you have some breathing room, come back and redo it with an Excel scorecard. So to your question, you can get the detailed scores. Just takes a little extra time. So when we recreate another one, we'll see how it'll give us a different message when we try and import the scores. I'm going to put some in for power equipment too here right quick and see what happens. There may be something out of whack with power equipment in this test data. I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully we don't get ourselves backed into a corner here. I'm optimistic. Sometimes this test database I've used for all this stuff has some weirdness in it that causes me grief, but we'll see. All right. So I don't think there's a whole lot else to dealing with manual scoring. It's pretty straightforward. You type in the total scores or you type in the ranks. That's about all there is to it. Any questions about that particular concept?
Mark, you can use manual scoring and Excel scoring, but back and forth together. So
Yep.
some contests entered as manual score, some contests entered with the Excel score.
Yep, that's right. You can use them both. So you can do the ones, like a lot of times you end up with judges that just kind of refuse to do things the right way. You know, you give them the Excel scorecards and they refuse to do it, or they say, I don't have a laptop, so they just bring you a sheet of paper and that's fine. You can just type their scores in the manual scoring and then put the others in the other way and it should be no problem. All right, so the other thing, the other thing to consider is this concept of a online testing option. Now this is more of an advanced concept that I don't think very many people will have a need for. But we have seen an increase in the number of states who seem to want to do like a written test as part of the contest. And that written test concept can be very, very painful to get through because you end up with hundreds or thousands of scores from some written test that you need to put in somewhere, right? And there's really a couple of options for doing that. If I go back and look at one of my contests, I might have a scoring rule somewhere. Let's say, usually this happens more in leadership contests, I think. Like let's say prepared speech. I only got one contestant there. Maybe community service. How many we got in there? Community service might be a good one. Maybe I've got one team. Man, I can't find any good test data here. All right, let's try masonry. Oh yeah, masonry is a good one. So I got like a half dozen or so people in masonry. And you'll notice on my scoring rubric, I have plumb and level and square. And then one of the things is 100 points for a written test. So how do I get that written test taken care of? If I'm, at the actual contest event, if the students are sitting down and taking a written test live right there as part of their contest, it's easy. Whatever the scores they get, the judges tally that up and they type it right into the Excel spreadsheet. But what happens a lot of times is you'll have a written test that's taken maybe before the whole thing begins. Kind of like the old PDP used to be, where you'd sit down before the whole conference begins and take a written test. And you'd like to get those scores put in. And some states are using something like Class Marker or the Career Essentials assessments to take an assessment about masonry, for example, and then they want to get those score results brought into the system. So what we built a couple of years ago is a way that you can take scores that a judge never even sees, and you can get them into the system without the judges ever seeing them. And then the system will incorporate those online test scores as part of the student's total package, right? Now, there's pros and cons to this approach, because if your judges never see those written scores, they don't know what the students did, and then they have questions about, like, if that's a row on your Excel spreadsheet for written tests, like, what am I supposed to put here? Where's my scores? You got to communicate pretty steadily with the judges to let them understand, you as the judges don't need this written score. We have the written scores in the back office. We'll put them into the system for you. So the judges don't end up needing to see those scores at all. You just got to make sure they know that so they're not confused. So what ends up happening is you put the online test scores into the system before you ever even import the Excel scorecards. It gives you a break, right? You can generate, the 50 or 100 Excel scorecards and send them out. And while your contests are going on, you can have somebody back at your registration scoring area putting the online test scores in. And if your online test scores you have results in an Excel file, you can even import them. It's a little tedious to make the import work, but the concept's pretty good. Let me show you a couple things you need to do in order, if you're interested in that. There's a good bit of documentation over here in the document on online test scores. We're on page 18. It describes in detail kind of how this works and what you have to do. It's a little cumbersome. As you can see, there's 5 or 6 steps to it. So I'm not going to lie and say, oh yeah, this is super easy. This is one of the more advanced concepts. And we don't have to go through all the gory details of it here, but I at least want to show you the concept of how it works. So if I go back to masonry, and I have on my scoring tab this thing called written test, I'm going to flip these two around so they're in a different sequence. I'm going to put production here, whatever production is. And the next one, I'm going to put my written test at the very bottom, but instead of written test, I'm going to call it online space test, because it's not a written test they're doing by hand. It's a, let's say it's a career assessment document, test that they take online. And I get those results back from the Career Essentials platform. So I've got this thing here called online space test. Now if I go back to maintenance, under maintenance, we talked a little bit about this the other day. Remember how we talked about how there's different groupings for where are your Excel documents, what's your disk letter, this is what drive letter will be creating the Excel scorecards on. One of the maintenance settings you can configure is this thing called online test label. And the online test label I have here is online space test. So as long as this word, online test, matches the exact word I have over here in my scoring area for masonry, online space test, then this whole online testing concept works. As long as those two things match. I've got this word matching this word. That's what the system's looking for. So then what happens is we come to this online test batch entry screen, and we can load those contestants. And what I'll end up with is only one contest has an online test. It's masonry. So the system is asking me, just put in here, what is the online test score? Just that one score. I don't care about all the other stuff for plumb and level and how good your joints are. All that's what the judges are going to put in. The only thing I'm going to put in here is the online test score that I got from the class marker system or from the career assessments, right? So I'll put in those test scores. It's only out of 100 here. Okay. Now when I've got those online test scores, the system, when I bring in the Excel scores, it will sort of merge them together. It'll say, okay, the judges gave you these 8 scores, plus you have this 9th score from online test. It'll merge them together to tell you who the winners are. There's a little question mark button up here that describes sort of how this works. There's a training video you can click to go and watch something about it online. And these buttons here will let you use some of the importing concept. Remember how I was saying you can import the concept? This document up here, the little question mark button, sort of describes and shows you how that Excel has to look, what your contestant numbers are, what the points are. So if you get the results in Class Marker or you download a score results from a Career Essentials, you can get them into this very, very simple 4-column format and just import them into the system. It works really well, but like I was saying, there's definitely a number of steps to it. Does this, at a super high level, does this sort of make sense what some states might use this for? Is it too early in the morning for online test scores? Yeah.
It's always too early.
It's always too early.
Mark,
It is. Yes.
Originally, you moved the screen or the line that said online test.
Yep.
Did you just do that for convenience?
That's right. Because let me go back and show you where I did that. I was on the masonry contest, and when I first started, there was one here called written test up here. And when I think about I'm going to put this into an Excel file, the judges are going to type their scores in, but they will not have to type this one. They only have to type the other. So if I had written test up in the middle somewhere, they'd be like, well, it's in the middle, I don't want to skip it. And then they wouldn't skip it. They'd put some other score in there, and it would ruin everything. So I always like to make the online test the very last thing and then tell the judges, hey guys, that very last row that says online test, don't worry about that. We got that for you. You type in all the skilled areas. Our scoring team will handle your online test for you. Now, if I go to the next contest, I'm just kind of cycling through here. You can see this on yours as well, motorcycle safety. Notice the difference between my two here. Masonry, I have all these 9 skill areas, plus I have 3 extra blank rows with no score at all on them. But if I go to my next contest, motorcycle service doesn't have that. We found over the years this concept of adding several blank rows to every contest for scoring is a great idea. Because remember, what happens is we're going to generate an Excel scorecard for this contest, and we're going to give that Excel file to a judge and say, type your scores in here. And inevitably, one of those judges is going to come back to you and say, well, remember when I told you what my scoring rubric was going to be? I thought of one more thing I want to do, but I don't have a blank row in the Excel file to put it. That's a real pain in the neck for you, because what you have to do is take that Excel file, get rid of the file you originally created, and create a new file with the extra row on it. So we found it's better to just have 3 extra blank rows on every single contest so that your judges have a couple blank rows in case they want them. If they don't want them, it's no big deal. They just leave them blank. But if they do want them and you didn't create them, it's a hassle for you and for the judge, because he's got to walk all the way back over your scoring area, bring you the stick and say, hey, can you fix this for me and put a new row on it? Make sense? So notice this little button over here that says append 3 blank scoring rows. I'm going to go over to, and you can follow along with me on yours, go over to motorcycle safety or motorcycle service technology. I only have these 8 things. Notice industry essays, the last one. When I click append 3 blank scoring rows, just instantly I have 3 extra rows here. That's really a good idea. Whatever you've done online, I would, for setting up your scores, I would suggest you do this to get some extra blank rows. In fact, we've made it so easy. If you go under maintenance, under the maintenance screen, there's a button there to do it automatically. It says append blank score or add blank scoring rows. And it'll ask you how many blank rows you want. And it'll do it for every single contest. I don't want to do it now because it'll also do it for the ones that already have it. So I'd end up with 6 blank rows. Again, not a big deal. It doesn't matter if you have 6 or 10 blank rows. Who cares? But adding those extra blank rows can make it a lot easier for you in the long run. And if you're scrolling through and you see some other contests, like here's on nurse assisting that doesn't have it, you just click that button and it'll instantly add those 3 extra scoring rows for you. Okay? All right. So I've put in my scores for masonry. I'm going to come back and remember masonry's one that I'm going to check here in a minute for my online test scores. All right. So the Excel scorecards. Creating the Excel scorecards is super easy. Super easy. The thing you got to check is to make sure you have your file locations configured correctly under maintenance. And we did that under the maintenance screen. Whoops. If you get back to your main menu and click maintenance, remember how we talked about this a couple times. The first 2 options, the Excel template and the Excel macro option, those are by default set to on the C drive, SkillsCMS, ScoreMaster. You shouldn't have to change any of this. It should be fine. The only time you'd ever have to change this is if you decided to install your stuff in some folder other than SkillsCMS. Remember, some of you yesterday were putting it in SkillsUSA, space CMS, or SkillsCMS 2020. That's why I'm saying that's a pain in the neck for you. It'll be a real hassle because all these places, you end up having to go and make that change. And it's hard to type all that in and get it right. It's just not worth the hassle. As long as you put everything on the C drive under SkillsCMS, it's super easy. You leave these as they are. Now you'll notice towards the bottom there's a couple true-false options here you can turn on and off. I just want to quickly run through what those are. I think this little question mark may show you some of those too. Let me cut some of it off. But that little question mark button will give you a description of what some of those things are. Down towards the bottom, the true-false options, these are kind of important before you start creating your Excel files to at least decide how you want them to work. We're going to leave them set the way they are here. But the allow comments one there at the bottom configures whether or not you want to allow your judges to provide comments on the Excel scorecards. And we'll see what you end up with there is a row at the very bottom of your scores for judges to type in comments about each student. Which is kind of cool. If your judges have time to provide feedback on how the kids did, those comments can be available in all their scoring reports and the students can see them if you print some of those reports out. Now at the moment, we have not put any of those comments online, right? So your students come online, they can't see those comments because we're a little hesitant about, if judges say something inappropriate about a student, this was the dumbest kid ever in masonry. Well, you don't necessarily want that shown online, right? So it's just for you and for your judges, and some of the reports you could print off and give to them, but you don't have to worry about them seeing it online. If you don't want to mess with comments, you don't even want to give them the option, just turn this off. It won't show up. The second option there about create judges, we're going to see in a few minutes how the scorecards can have judge tabs on them. We'll see how that works. That's one we want to leave on for here as well. The other couple of these are more for the PowerPoint presentation. Do I want to include city and state in the PowerPoint presentation? Do I want to include job exhibits? Do I want to include technical testing? And then the strict cut scores one. The strict cut scores one there at the bottom is more for, do I want to only allow medals if you get above a certain point, right? Let me show you where I would set that. I'm going to turn that off. I don't like that feature myself because it runs a risk of you having a contest that gets no medal. If your students don't score very well and you have strict cut scores turned on, that contest won't even be called because we're saying nobody got gold, silver, or bronze. The kids did terribly. I'm going to turn it off, just turn that checkbox off, and I'm going to show you where that is set. Under contest, you can pick any contest you want. I'm going to go back to masonry for a second because that's the one we're playing with. Notice on the scoring tab up at the top, there's a strict cut score percentage. It's 0. If I set that to 70%, that's basically saying if you don't score 70% of 1,000, 700 points, if nobody scores 700 points, there are no medals awarded at all. Now, there are some states where that's kind of a rule. They're like, you know what? If the kids don't get 70%, we are not giving them a medal, and we're not sending them to national. My feeling about that is these kids have come a long ways to compete, and you probably have some industry sponsors who have paid and are giving prizes. And just because the judges didn't award the kids enough points, you totally ignore the contest as if it didn't happen. I think that backfires more often than it helps. With industry sponsors who were livid that they gave $8,000 worth of prizes and you didn't even give them out, So I would use that with caution. I never like to turn it on, but I know for some states that's a sensitive topic and they really feel critically about, you can't get a medal unless you get 70%. That's where you do it. If I leave this at 70 and I have this thing turned off under maintenance, it just gets ignored, right? It doesn't matter. So it's not like you have to go through and make sure that's set to 0 for everything. As long as you leave strict cut scores turned off, you'll be fine. Okay. Now, to make some of the Excel scorecards, we've talked about, the low score warning. Yeah, there's one other thing, the low score warning. Under maintenance, there's this other feature for a low score warning. This is a feature, we're going to see it here in a minute. By default, we send you the database with it set to 25%. What that means is in the Excel file, as your judges are typing in the scores, if they type in a number that's less than 25% of the available points for anything like 100 points for that written test, if somebody gets 18 points, it'll just color that cell blue to say this is a very, very low score. It doesn't prevent it. It doesn't block it. We just added that a year or two ago as sort of a way to prevent people from fat fingering a number, right? I'm in a hurry. I'm typing in Excel, and I meant to type 82 points, but I didn't hit the 8 right, and I just got 2. When you put 2 points instead of 82 points, it'll turn blue, and hopefully that'll visualize for a judge. Oh, why is that blue? Oh, I meant to type 82, not just 2, right? So we'll see that here in a second. I think that's a good one to leave on. I'm going to leave mine set at 25%. Let's see. And we talked about understanding strict cut scores. That's good. So let's go ahead and create one of these files. I need to check one other thing. And if you're going to do this on your machine, you also need to check this yourself. Notice my USB stick is drive E. Mine is drive E. So I need to make sure under maintenance it knows where to send the Excel scorecard. So I'm going to go back under maintenance. And my disk letter, the disk letter, mine is G, so that's not correct. If I try and create this thing, it's going to try and save the Excel file in drive G. Maybe I don't even have drive G because I noticed my USB was E. So I'm just going to change this to E, E, and just change the letter so you leave the rest of it. It'll be E:\\, just like you see it there. All I do is change the letter. That's just saying where I'm going to export the files to. Okay? Now it should be good to go. Let's go try and create one. Yours might be D or F. Just check yours, set it to whatever it's supposed to be. And then I'm going to go to contests. The first one that happens to come up for me is a pretty good one. It looks like this will work fine. It's medical terminology. I've got 9 students. They all have contestant numbers. If I look at the scoring tab, I've got these few extra items. I've got medical root words, prefixes, suffixes, abbreviations. Just to show you how this works, notice I do not have the 3 extra rows. I'm going to leave it that way just so we can see what happens. Up on the top in this little blue toolbar, there's a little button that looks like an old style floppy disk. Create scorecard Excel file. When I click that button, it'll say, hey, are you ready to create the file for medical terminology? In drive E, I say okay. It'll think for a minute, tell me it's working. Maybe a little more than a minute. There we go. Now, if you get an error, more than likely the file path is wrong, right? What that means is when I go back to maintenance, you might not have your stuff on SkillsCMS. If it's in a different place, that's what would cause it 99% of the time. We good?
You can also need the pathway to Excel,
Yep. Yep.
because it's got to be able to find those template files.
Yep.
So if your path is different, instead of, if you don't have it in SkillsCMS, you've got to change that path as well.
Yep. Yep. All 3 of the, well, the bottom was not so critical, but these 2 need to be set to wherever you have the thing installed. Okay. So it created that file successfully. Now, if I go look on my USB stick, remember mine's drive E, you look on whatever yours is. Notice I have a file there called medical terminology-S for secondary, because I was working on the secondary as opposed to -P for post-secondary, or -M for middle school. And if I open that Excel file up, I'll have contestant numbers along the top and my 4 skilled areas along the left and some color coding, and I'm good to go. Seem okay? Did it work? No? Yeah, sort of, some. Once you get it open, go ahead and just type in some scores there and see if you can make it work. That's okay.
So it's not.
If you got errors on this, here's what I want you to do, because retyping all this is mind-numbingly painful. It'll take an hour to get through this, which we don't have. So here's what I want you to do. If you got an error, if that didn't work and you're looking here and thinking, some of these things are not right, I deleted this word, I'm not sure what I was supposed to do here, this doesn't look right, it is far, far easier to start over with a new copy of the program than type all that back in, because it's terribly difficult to get it typed back in. The program database, we're just going to copy over again. Now, if yours is working fine, if you created an Excel, just play with the Excel for a minute and ignore me. If you're getting errors, here's what I want you to do. I'm going to exit completely out of the system. And here's what I want you to do. On that USB stick, there is a folder called uncompressed files. That's where I put an uncompressed version of everything, just so we have someplace to start fresh in case this happened, because this always happens. There's a fresh copy of the program, okay? So here's what I want you to do. If you got errors or something got screwed up, find on the USB in the uncompressed files folder, grab a fresh copy of the program database. It's called Skills Registration Program. We're just going to get a fresh new copy of the program and start over, okay? Won't mess up your data. Everything will be fine. This is just pretend like we got, remember, 40.1 to 40.2. All I'm doing is walking you through getting a fresh copy of 40.1. So I'm going to copy that Skills Registration Program. I just right-click it and choose Copy. Now I'm going to go back to my C drive in the SkillsCMS folder, and I'm going to paste it, which will overwrite the file that's already there. That way I can start over with a fresh copy and those file paths won't be mixed up on me. Does that seem okay? We're just copying a fresh one over. You guys good? Does that work? Can you get it copied okay? Yep. Okay. Now if I launch it again, I think this is where I screwed up in my explanation I was telling you guys. Under maintenance, these two settings, Excel template and Excel macro, you should not change. Don't change these. The reason I want you to keep everything installed on the C drive under SkillsCMS is so you don't have to change this. Because changing this it's just too painful. It's not worth it. Because you have to type so much stuff to get this right, and it's just very, very tedious. So if you installed everything on the C drive under SkillsCMS, you should never have to change any of that. The only thing you have to change is this one called disk letter, which points to where is my USB stick. By default, it's set to G, but I know mine is not G, so I'm just going to change just the letter G to the letter E. Mine's E. Don't change anything else, though. Okay? That's the only thing we want to change. This other one, almost nobody ever uses this other one. This thing called Excel hard disk path. We'll see what this is for in a second. If you're creating a whole bunch of these Excel files at once, like 50 or 100, you can say, where do I want to put them on my hard drive? That's all that's for. But hardly anybody ever messes with that one. Okay? So if you got yours to work, that's great. Let's try creating another one. If you didn't yet, I'm going to walk through it again, how we created it. I already have one for medical terminology. I'm going to see whatever's next here. Community service. Oh, I've only got one contestant. That's kind of lame. Aesthetics. Aesthetics will be good because I've got 3 contestants or 4 contestants. I've got 7 different skill areas. I'm on the aesthetics one. I'm just going to click the little floppy disk button. Okay. And it'll create my file out there for aesthetics. Okay? Does that work that time for you guys? So once you've got an Excel file created, let's just try a couple things about in the Excel file. You'll notice there's some notes over on the top right that sort of describe how it works. If I go back and look at that, where's my file here? On my E drive, now I have aesthetics and medical terminology. If I open up medical terminology, there we go. So over on the far top right, if you scroll way out to the right, there's a little legend that tells you about the color coding. If you see a gray, so I'm just going to type some numbers in here for contestant 1231 so you can see sort of how this works. If I type in a 0, it'll turn that cell gray with a little dash in it, and that 0, that dash and the gray indicates I intentionally want this student to get no points. That's a good thing, right? If you just see a pink cell, the original default, all these are pink, you don't know whether the judge wants the kid to get 0 points or the judge just forgot to type in the kid's score. This is the #1 thing that will cause you grief at your award ceremony, because if a judge forgets to type in a score, and then you go back and look at the paper later on and realize he meant to get 80 points, but he forgot to type it in, the guy who was supposed to get a gold medal didn't even place. So to avoid that kind of nightmare, you know, when we start importing these are the things you want to look for. You do not want to see pink cells. And this is what James and I do at the Nationals. Every time we sit down with a judge, a tech chair brings in a stick and we see these pink cells and we say, did you mean to give this kid 0? If you did, let's type a 0 in every column or every cell. Don't just leave it blank. That way you know it's an intentional 0.
Now, if they're a no-show, that's a little bit different. I like seeing the whole row of pink for a no-show, just because it draws my attention. I can ask, okay, where was competitor 1141?
Yep.
So that way, instead of, because if you give them a 0, it's like they were there, and they really weren't there. So we want to, you know, that's the only time we want to see no entry, but we need to see it in the whole column. But I've seen where we've actually had situations where people have meddled and weren't even there.
Yep.
In West Virginia.
Not just West Virginia.
Yeah. And that's where the other thing you can do is, that's what one of the things that's nice about the comments. Remember, you don't have to worry about the comments ever getting to a student. But we can use it for things like no-show. I would type in here, this kid was a no-show. Now, how did this happen? If he's a no-show, how did it happen? Remember the whole thing about dropping students? We didn't drop a student, right? We gave the kid a contestant number, 1231. It's just when it came time to actually show up and compete, the kid was out playing with his cell phone, goofing off with his girlfriend, and didn't go to compete, right? It happens. So you just put in all zeros or leave it blank, as James saying, and put the word no-show in the comments, and you know, hey, look, he's a no-show. No big deal. Now, if I put in a number that's too large, like each one of these is worth 250 points, if I'm typing along in a huge hurry and I accidentally type 230 or a 320 instead of 230, it'll turn red, indicating that cell's too big. It accepts it. It's not like we can block them from typing in here, but we highlight them in red to tell you that they typed too big a number. And then the other thing we talked about is if I type in a number that's like 25, it'll turn blue because I got less than 25% of the total possible points because I accidentally typed 25 instead of I was supposed to type 215, right? So these color codings on the Excel file are a way to help your judges see as they're doing data entry, am I doing this right or am I doing this wrong? In the ideal scenario, you'll see all white, just a column of white numbers, and that's it. If you see any colors at all, it's at least worth a conversation.
Mark, on that cell, we put in a 0 and it shows us a blank.
Yep.
Dash.
Yep.
Will it show up as 0 on the report?
Yep. On the reports, they'll see a 0. Like the detailed reports, you'll see a 0. Yep.
Mark, are you able to have the spreadsheet populate the contested number for the fourth place winner? You know, it puts their score out when you fill it in. It doesn't the contestant wrong. Because we have our judges fill out a sheet first, second, third, and fourth.
Oh, yeah.
But
Okay.
They go search by score to find the contested number.
I thought it did that.
It puts the
Oh, the score. You're saying the number itself.
Yeah, the contested number.
I see.
So down there on the left.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah, let me look at that. I might be able to do that.
Okay.
All right. You'll notice I've just put in a bunch of sample numbers here, and I constantly have a tie. I'm just going to, for now, I'm going to play with it so I don't end up with a tie, because we'll talk about tiebreakers and stuff later. Eventually, I want to get to where I don't see a tie. Let me jot down a note about that. Okay. Seem all right so far? Any questions? Pretty straightforward on using the Excel file. I'm going to go ahead and save that dude and close it. Now, while I'm here, let me show you one other thing. Remember how we said it was a good idea to have some extra blank rows? I don't have them here. And so if this medical terminology contest or judge tech chair comes to you and says, hey, I also decided to do one other thing called medical counting, and I need a row for medical counting, you don't have a row for medical counting. At this point, it's a royal pain in the neck for you because he's already typed in all his scores, and now he realizes, oh, I need one extra thing. The only way to get around this is for you to rename his file, add the skill area, create a new file, and then copy and paste all his scores from his first file to the new file. It's really a hassle. Yeah, that's the catch. Is these are all locked, right? If somebody comes in here and tries to change one of these contestant numbers, and say, hey, I had this kid show up, his contestant number was something different. We don't want them to change the contestant numbers because the system knows that contestant number 1001 goes with a particular student. We can't let the judges just change those numbers. Same with adding contestants. If the contestant judge comes out here and says, hey, I want to add a new contestant number out here, we block that because we wouldn't know which contestant number goes with which contestant. We'd never get it right. So all that stuff's blocked. What, as James is alluding to, what some people have figured out is, well, I'm just going to take all these cells in your entire spreadsheet and copy them into my own whole brand new spreadsheet that has none of our logic built into it. that will ruin your event, right? You'll get junk and you'll have a PowerPoint presentation that's missing stuff. So you got to watch for that sort of thing and help your judges understand, look, we're using this system for a reason. Just play by the rules. When we give you a file, use that file. If you don't like it, come back and talk to us. We'll help figure out what we can do to make it better. But if they start messing around with stuff, you're going to end up in a bad spot. So that's why I'm saying it's really smart to have the 3 extra rows, because now I'll have some blanks. And if they want to add a new thing for medical counting, they do it. No problem.
So you can type, if the blank lines are there, you can type in the skill set and the point value, it'll automatically just add it in. It's
Yep.
just-
You got it.
those lines just have to already previously.
Exactly. The lines have to previously be there. So the other thing they can do, if your judges come and say, you know what, we had a real problem. The guy who normally tests our medical abbreviations isn't here this year. I don't know how to do medical abbreviations. Instead, I want to do medical counting. I want to count pills or whatever. They can change this word, medical pill counting. They can change the naming of whatever the skill area is. They just can't add new ones. Right? I'm going to save that guy. Let's go try creating another one. I'm going to create another one for aesthetics. But before I make the aesthetics one, I want to use that button to append 3 blank rows. So I'm on the scoring tab, append 3 blank rows. Oh, I notice I've got 1,100 points here too. That might or might not be a problem. I'm just going to change this to 100 points instead of 200 points. Append 3 blank scoring rows. I've got some blank rows. I'm going to hit the disk button. Yes, I'm ready to create the stick for aesthetics. Now this one's going to have judge tabs on it. We'll see in a minute why the first one didn't have judge tabs. Once it creates that one, I must already have one there for aesthetics. I want to replace it. All right. Now if I go look at my USB stick, I have this file for aesthetics. And I have the 3 extra blank rows in it. Now if they don't use these blank rows, no big deal. They just come back in and nothing happens. But if they want to add something, they add whatever they want.
Can it be a penalty as well?
Can it be a penalty as well? Meaning, could they put in a negative score there?
Like a safety violation. Some of them don't have safety violations.
I would probably suggest having an extra row here for that too. You notice how these are categorized penalties? In order for the penalties to really show up correctly on all the reporting, it's okay to have a blank one for a penalty and let them, put whatever they want in there. But I wouldn't want to use a standard with a negative amount. I mean, it would work, nothing would go wrong, but it's going to make the reports look funny. And when you type in the Excel, it's going to be negative instead of positive. It'll act weird.
A lack of score is a penalty, right? So if you're not adding 10 for no safety violations, then do you see what I mean?
Yep, that's another way to do it. Sure. Yep. That's another way to do it. You could say, hey, if you're safe, you get 10 points for being safe. If you put a 0, you get 0 points for being safe. We assume you were very safe.
But if there's a 0 out there, there's no points assigned to it.
For here, yeah. So what he's suggesting is here I could say safety
I'll do it on the Excel sheet.
and say 10. Oh, yeah, do it on the Excel sheet. Yeah. You could say, I want to have a points here for safety, and it's worth 10 points. And if you didn't get it, you were not safe. This guy was pretty safe, and this guy was really safe.
And does that affect anything when you have more than 1,000 points out there?
Well, it's not a huge deal. At the national office, they have gotten pretty strict about every contest outside of Quiz Bowl, every contest being 1,000 points. But that's just a policy, right? Nothing's programmed around that. It doesn't matter. Now, a couple things to notice. This spreadsheet has judge tabs on it. My first one did not. If I go back and look at my, where was my medical terminology, it just has a sheet 1 down here. It has sheet 2 and sheet 3, but they're totally blank. There's no judge tabs on this one. But my aesthetics one has a totals tab and 3 judge tabs and a printable tab. So the reason for that is, if I go look back in the system, notice on aesthetics, my number of judges is set to 3. But on medical terminology, my number of judges is 0. Which makes sense, right? Medical terminology, that's a test, right? They're not going to get judged. They write on a piece of paper and they get a score. I don't need 3 judges for that. But for aesthetics, I'm basically saying I have 3 judges, and each judge is going to give a different set of points, and I'm going to use the average to total them all up. Make sense? Go ahead.
So how do I do 3 or 5 for all contests?
So, yep. So Paul's asking, I want 5 judges for every single contest, and I don't have to go through and manually do it, right? Under maintenance, remember how earlier we talked about there was a contest function for add blank scoring rows? I want to put 3 blank scoring rows on everything. There's another button that says set number of judges on all contests. Under maintenance, and then contest functions tab. And I can say, I want to set 3 judges on all my contests, every single one, or 5, whatever you want. You can do between 0 and 6. I'm going to do 5. And now it'll set every contest to have 5 judges. Now, that's something you need to set before you start making Excel files, right? Because that medical terminology, when it's too late, I already made the Excel file. I already put in the scores for just one thing, one judge. I can't go back and redo it without recreating the whole file. So this concept of the judge tabs is really great. And in fact, what we've decided at the national conference is we put 5 judges or 6, I can't even remember. We put a bunch of judges on every single stick, even for things like medical math, where they're only going to do, it's just a score. There's not judges. They just get the score. Because if I have 3 judge tabs here and I only use one of them, who cares? The other 2, just leave them alone. No big deal. It's just way easier for you than to have somebody come back with a USB stick and say, well, I told you I only wanted 2 judges, but then I had 2 other guys show up, so can you put 4 on here? Whenever somebody says, can you change my stick, you know that means I got to recreate the stick. Not a big deal, it just takes a couple seconds, unless they've already started typing. And this is what happens all the time. They'll come to us and say, I started typing all my scores in and got halfway through and realized I need a change. Again, it's not the end of the world. It's no big deal. It's just a pain in the neck. Because now you got to rename their file, copy a new file, copy and paste all the scores, or just tell them, no, you got to start over and retype it all, right? It's just a pain. So what I would suggest is at least 3, if not 5 judge tabs on everything, and at least 3, maybe 5, at least 3 blank rows on everything. That covers you for any weird eventualities that your judges may come up with.
There's no inbuilt function to the scoring rows there that would prevent copying and pasting from an old Excel sheet to a new Excel sheet, right? And if you enter anything from F8 through F15,
Base values.
There's nothing to prevent that, right? So, I mean, that's one of the things with Excel, right? Excel, we intentionally try very hard never to put any code in Excel. Like, we don't want to put anything that would block things, because you remember that junk we had to jump through at the beginning yesterday where we had to go and set the trusted locations in that folder? If we put code in this Excel file, every one of your judges, when they open that thing, they're going to get some scary looking warning. It says, this file contains macros. Microsoft doesn't trust macros. Are you sure you want to do this? It's just scary for people. So we don't do that. So to your point, we can't block them or prevent them from doing what you're saying. What he's saying is, and tell me if I'm misunderstanding, could they take another file from 2 years ago or whatever and copy and paste into this one? We can't block them. They could do that.
what I meant is if they bring me a stick and say, I need a new scorecard, but I've already put all my data in this one, is it possible for me to copy Judge 1 into Judge 1 of the new one?
Yes. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So, and what James alluded to, so let's do that as a sample. Let me show you. If I put in a couple of scores here, they're way too big. I get that. I know I'm going to mess it all up, but that's okay.
What I would suggest is, because you know how to copy and paste, and your tech stack can run the system, I do it for them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can flip it and say, oh, just copy it in, and like, let them do it because they will mess it up.
Yep.
They need to do it.
That's exactly right. So here's what I'm going to do. And this is a key thing.
They're really nice and they smile.
Yeah. They have the best intentions, but it screws up your data. What I'm going to do, I'm going to rename this aesthetics one, because if you don't rename it, you'll accidentally overwrite it and you lose everything they typed. So I'm going to rename this aesthetics to aesthetics dash first pass. Like this is the first pass where they typed in some scores or whatever you want. Now I'm going to go back to aesthetics again. And the difference is now I'll have 5 judges and whatever, maybe I fixed something here. I don't know how I got this penalty in here at 2-0 because I didn't put a sequence on it. Yeah, I'm going to set that. Maybe I have this safety thing. So I've made a couple of adjustments. Now when I recreate the stick, it's going to make a new one for aesthetics. Fortunately, since I renamed it, I don't have to worry about it overwriting my original file.
And if you have, like, I know with the cosmetology contest, a lot of times we have a lot more judges, and sometimes we have a lot more than 5. You can go in and manually adjust that one contest to, I mean, I think at National we have 8. So we actually create 8 tabs for them, you know, and that's the only, if you have more, I mean, there's no reason to do that for all the contests just because of the fact that it's just too much for people to click through and they get confused. But yeah, so you can manually set for a particular contest, you can increase, and we have some people that I don't want to see those tabs and you can decrease.
Yeah, you can set it to 0 like we did for that medical one. Yep, yep. So now I've got 2 files, aesthetics, the new one, and aesthetics first pass. And I want to copy my scores that the guy already started typing. So I'm just going to open both files. This is the first pass one where he typed in some scores. And this is the second one that I just created that's blank. Now what I want to do is grab these cells where they already typed a bunch of stuff. Even the penalty rows, just in case they put some in. I'm going to copy those and switch over to the new version. And what James was talking about, paste special, I'm going to right click here and use this option to paste values. When I paste the values, that'll make sure I don't accidentally overwrite any weird range names or any strangeness in the Excel file itself. So all I've got is whatever values they have, I'm bringing them over. That way I'm not bringing over weird name ranges or anything else from there.
And you'll notice that safety, because in the original spreadsheet, there was a line skip. That's why that line on the new spreadsheet looks funny. It's because it's actually, because he actually created the new spreadsheet with that safety in there.
Yep.
He has to move the data up more.
So maybe I'd say, you know what, since I already have all this in here, it doesn't hurt to have a blank one. I might just say put safety down here instead. It's worth up to 10 points, and now that all kind of gets cleaned up.
If you didn't paste his values, would it grab like the colors or anything like
that? It could grab the colors, yep. It could grab any formatting, any special formatting. It could grab, generally it's not going to ruin things. It's not going to use a huge problem, but it can mess up the colors, and then people say, why, it's not over 300 points. Why is it red? Well, because you messed up the formatting. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, and just as a side note on those judge tabs, and we have had this happen at National, I've had it happen at State. It's like, well, my judge 1, his name is Bob, judge 2 was Sam, judge 3 was Jill. They'll actually go and change the names on those. That's generally a bad thing because the way the formats or the formulas are working, they're looking for judge 1.
Right.
And I've had people delete those tabs. I've had people move the tabs around. And if you don't catch that, it can throw off the results. It's like, and nothing worse than, getting called to the carpet, after the award ceremony. Well, they said, the tech chair said this person didn't win, this other person won, and we're trying to figure out why this happened. Is because where they went in, they moved stuff around, or they deleted the judge tab, and I'll just copy the tab and put it back. And then it literally eliminates that tab as being.
But
So
the safest thing to do would be to just recreate it or open your original copy the data, do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a situation, yeah.
Yep.
You could do it for all of them because it just takes so long.
Yep. So now, assuming you've got one with judge tabs, just play with it for a minute and kind of learn how this works. I've got judge 1, I put some scores in, and I'm just going to use this first column to put this judge gave the absolute perfect score. 100 for the first thing, 400 for traffic stop. I don't know why they have a traffic stop in aesthetics, but I mean, must be some weird makeup stuff going on here. I don't know.
If it stops traffic,
That makeup was so good it stopped traffic.
they just reverse the words.
That's hilarious. All right, so I got 1,000 points. 1,000 points. Judge 1 gave 1,000 points for this kid. If I go to the totals page, it's 1,000. And that's why if you put 5 judge tabs on every sheet and they only use judge 1, it's fine. It doesn't matter because it totally ignores all the other sheets. But if I go to judge 2 and put in some really low scores like 10 and 40 and 10, I put really low because the second judge was really a grumpy old dude and said, this makeup is terrible. Now I got really low scores. Judge 1 is great. Judge 2 is awful. The average is what happens on the totals page. It averages them out. Okay? Now, this has a lot of implications that are all good, right? Because some judges, what happens with some contests is I'll say, hey, look, for us, this traffic stop is obviously the biggest, most important thing, and so I'll have 3 judges all doing traffic stop. But those 2 judges, they don't do anything but the traffic stop. And so I can put in scores here for this judge, Judge 3 I'm on now. He gave 230, and he gave 200, and he gave 305. So this judge can give scores for just traffic stop. That's it. All the others are blank. And Judge 4, same thing. Judge 4 is another guy who's only doing traffic stop. That's the only thing this guy does. Right? So all these others are blank. They all stay purple. And when you see this, when you're kind of about to import these scores and you ask, why are all these other judges blank? Did they not score anything? Hopefully your tech chair will say, yeah, exactly. Got these 2 guys, they just do this one thing. The others are all empty. Okay, so far? There's a critical thing that I want you to watch here. This traffic stop row has the average scores are like 210.333, right? It's averaging all of those. But all these other judges, they don't do the other skill areas, and it's important to leave them blank. Because if I come here and say, well, this judge is all 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 is not the same as blank. So it averages 0. So if I do that for Judge 3 and I do that for Judge 4, zeros in Excel end up causing an average. So now it's 4, this score divided by 4 instead of divided by 1 or 2. And notice how the scores are terrible now. It's 1 point. Because it's whatever it was, 10 points divided by 4 judges, because 3 of them gave him zeros. 10 divided by 0, you're going to get 2. Whereas if I leave them blank, it doesn't do that, right? So if a judge is just doing what a lot of people call station-based scoring, I've got a judge, he sits at this station and just judges this one thing, that's fine. Only put his scores on the one station he's judging. And don't put zeros in all the rest of them. And if you see that, no big deal. I'm just going to go through and delete all these because the judge tells me, nah, man, I'm a station-based judge. I just stand here at the traffic stop station and check makeup all day. It's all I do. All right. What do you think? Does that seem okay? Now I'm going to put in a, this is really one other really important thing. I forgot to tell you this. Look here. How I judge, remember James was saying a few minutes ago, when I did this earlier, I had safety down below 1, and so I needed to move it. And maybe I give him, this guy got 9 points for safety. This guy got 0 because he was not safe at all. This is on Judge 1. If I go look at the totals page, the word is in the wrong place. See how that's different?
You also have a score too on that one.
Yep. So the catch is when we do an import, we only import the totals page. So one thing we always do when we're checking in scores is just have somebody who's eyeballing these look at each sheet and say, I noticed the word safety's out of whack here. In fact, maybe it's easier to just grab all of these, copy them from here, and then paste special to get those values all here. That way my totals page looks exactly like everything else. And then I'm also eyeballing thinking, wait a minute, on my totals page, why do I see this weird 10 here? There's not supposed to be anything there. I got to look around and see, where did you guys screw this up? Here it is. On this one, you gave him 10 points for that, and you shouldn't have, or whichever one it was. There we go. So the key thing to remember is we only import the totals page. So if they have changed something, like they say, instead of traffic stop, I want to call this one traffic cone hitting. They hit a traffic cone. If I change that wording here, it's not going to get imported if it's not on the totals page. So we just always kind of eyeball that totals page and make sure whatever I have for the judges matches. This is just something, and we'll talk about that when we talk about importing, setting up a station to virus scan those disks and eyeball them for any kind of weirdness is a great idea. Just have somebody who's familiar with these Excel files sitting there eyeballing them.
And I am.
So there are comments there. Your different judges can put in different comments. So let's say Judge 1 put in some comments and Judge 2 put in some comments and Judge 3 puts in some comments for this student. When you look at the totals page, it just combines them all. It combines the comments from Judge 1 and Judge 2 and Judge 3. So when we import, now it's not sophisticated. This whole comments thing is fairly new. We've only had it about a year and a half or so. So it's not sophisticated enough to keep track of which comment came from which judge. But at least when we get the contents back in the CMS platform, you'll be able to see all those comments and share them if you choose. Okay?
Mark, if we change in any language in that contest area on that column D.
Yep.
When we upload it in the CMS.
Yep.
And we post online, what will they see?
Yep.
This
They'll see
version?
the new one. Yep. The new one. So in this case, we'll notice I changed this. Remember, it was originally traffic safe stop or something, and I changed it to traffic cone hitting. Now, when we import that, it's going to update this. It's going to update the CMS, so we'll have that, and that's what they'll see on online when they look at their detailed scores.
For technical chair, they're able to change those standards.
Yep.
And
They can change the standards.
originally exported that back up to the national website, they don't have those.
Well, you're asking, I think, Janet, you're asking a slightly more nuanced question, which is important. So what Darren's asking is, when the students go online to look at their detailed scores, will they see these words? Yes, they will see these words, because that's what gets exported from your
The
system.
new ones from the technical chair.
That's right.
Okay.
What I think you're asking is, well, what about like next year? Will I have those same scoring things for next year? And that's up to you. So what happens is, this new wording is in your copy of the SkillsCMS, but I don't have that. So at the end of the year, when we talked about archiving your conference, if you send me your final database, I can wipe out all your scoring rubrics for your state event online and replace them with whatever you used at your actual conference, so that next year you're starting at the same place you ended last year, right? Now, if you don't do that, if you don't send me your final database, so I update it on the site, next year when you start out, this one thing still says traffic stop. It doesn't say traffic cone hitting. It's not a huge deal, not that big of an issue, but if you spend a lot of time getting your CMS, all the scoring rubrics to say just what you want them to say, you probably want to send that to me so you start there next year. Otherwise, you're back at where you were 2 years ago. Make sense? And to your point, Janet, I think Bart already asked me yesterday, can we take region 1? I think we need to double check on that, Bart. But one region that he's got all set, can he reset that to all 13 regions so they all start at the same spot? So that kind of thing we can help with too, yep. Does that make sense what I just described? It gets a little hairy with those things, but the key thing to remember is we only import the totals page. So it's just a little bit of extra work when you're looking at these. You just got to eyeball them and see. It's super easy. Like we do this all the time in National. We say, let me just flip through these tabs and see, do they all look the same? And I'll notice, nope, you changed something on Judge 1. I'm going to make sure that gets reflected on the totals tab as well.
If they were to change it on the judges tab, would it change it? to all
It does not.
judges?
It does not.
So it's not saying it's just-
That's right. That's one of those features that I'd love to enhance, so it would do that automatically. I just haven't figured out a way to do that yet. Okay, so I'm going to save that one. Let's make one more. I'm going to close these guys down. I'm going to go pick some other one. one we wanted to do was dental assisting. Remember, because we did dental assisting as a manual, and I just want to see what happens if we do dental assisting this other way too. Create a stick for that. Now, the way we're doing this, one contest at a time, can be a little tedious. What we generally suggest is when you're ready to start making your Excel files, you just imagine you're going to have a separate USB stick for every contest, right? So you give in your contest packet, here's your list of contestants, here's those different reports we talked about giving to the judges, and here's your USB stick to type your scores on. So you'll need a stack of however many contests you have. You're doing 80 contests, you need 80 USB sticks, right? So what we generally recommend is use this batch button up here, batch, or you can also get to it from the maintenance screen. There's a button on the contest functions for create batch scoring files. It basically just brings up a screen like this that says, hey, when you're ready to do all your sticks as a two-step process, I'm going to refresh the contest list. And then I'm ready to create whatever files I want. Now, there's a couple of steps here just to kind of read through this screen and see what it says. There's 3 columns for all secondary, all post-secondary, all middle school, and each of your contests is listed there. These checkboxes at the top basically just turn them all on. And now it's got this little checkbox up here that says, asks if I want to prompt before creating. This option, if you turn this off, like if you wanted to stick all the files on one USB stick without asking, you can turn that off and they'll just make 180 files, whatever, on your USB stick at one shot. Generally, you don't want to do that. Generally, you want to leave this prompt set on. So what'll happen is, I'm not going to do it for all of them because it'll take an hour and a half. I'm just going to do it for one of them, or a couple of them. Like, let's say action skills and advertising design. Those are the ones I want to do. So when I've turned those on, I hit this create button, this same little floppy disk button, and it'll start asking me questions. Something about preliminaries, I don't care. Do you want a copy of the scorecard file saved to the hard drive? I'm going to say no. Do I want to create the high school, college, and middle school together? This is asking, generally speaking, you'll have one USB stick for advertising design, and it'll have high school and college and middle school all in the same stick, because you generally have one tech chair running the contest. If you don't do yours that way, like you have one stick for high school and a whole separate stick for college, you can say no to this one. I'm going to say yes, and it'll just start asking me questions. All right, put in the stick for advertising design. Yes, I want the preliminaries. It'll go and create that one, and then it'll do the next one, and then it'll do the next one. So it just prompts me, and all I have to have is my big box of USB sticks here, preferably labeled, get a little marker, put little sticky labels on them to say, this is the stick for ad design, this is the stick for architectural drafting, and you just keep cranking them through.
Mark, we've used the same sticks several years in a row. Does it replace those, or do we need to delete those out?
You'll want to wipe them out, yeah. You want to erase them, yeah. You don't necessarily have to. It would ask you, like if there was a file already on here, it'll say, I already see a file for advertising design S. Do you want to overwrite it? It's just an extra prompt. You have to say yes. And if you're not paying attention and you say no, it skips that file and the stick has last year's file on it. And then the other thing that causes problems there is if your judge renamed the file last year, he's like said advertising design -high school. Well, now I put one called advertising design -S, and I have 2 files, one from last year, one from this year, and it's very easily confused. Then when you go to import them, you don't even know which one to get. So it's much better. I know, I get it takes a little while. Just dedicate an hour, have some high school kid come help you, whatever. Put each stick in the drive and format it or erase it.
But that also checks batch file. So literally it's one click. I put this in, click, it does everything, eject, put the next one in, click, the batch file, it does everything, and it literally goes through the steps. It takes time depending on the number of jobs, but it is way.
Yeah, it helps a lot. It's definitely a good idea to wipe those out. We talked about the judge tabs, adding judge rows, talked about that stuff. All right, I'm voting, it's 9:30, I'm voting it's probably a good time to take a quick bio break. because the next thing we need to do is start importing these scorecards to see if we can get a PowerPoint to create. All right? So if you're going to want a couple, 2 or 3 Excel files with scores on them, so we have something to test. So while we're taking a break, it's 9:35, let's say 9:45, 9:50, we'll get started again. If you have a few minutes, go ahead and create a couple more sticks and put some sample scores in them so we have some test data to play with. I want to make sure I make one more for, what was that other one? Did I make masonry? No, I want to make masonry because that's the one we did the online test for. I want to show you how that works. Now I know it's 9:52. I know departure times are kind of weird for different folks. If you need to get up and bolt at any point, it's totally fine. Don't worry. Wave on your way out, and I'll see you next time I see you. It's totally fine. We'll stay here till probably 11:30-ish, maybe 12, to just talk about questions, because I know some of you have things you want to ask about, maybe some enhancements you want. So we'll have plenty of time for that in a while. But if you need to go, it's totally fine. So we've created a couple of sticks here. I have put in a couple of scores. I might put in a couple more just to make sure we have some data to play with. I want to try the dental assisting one and the masonry one, so we'll at least have those. Come on. There we go. Dental assisting. Okay, there we go. And then let me also do masonry right quick, because that was the other one we had some. We did the online test scores for, so let me put that one in. One other thing I wanted to mention, because somebody asked a few minutes ago about penalties. Whenever you have penalties, you want to be sure they get put in as negative numbers. So if this guy has a -10 clothing penalty, I'll type a -10 in there. It'll show up formatted just with the Excel formatting with the parentheses around it. But you type it in with a negative sign. If you don't type it in as a negative sign, if I just put 10, notice it shows up in red. That's to draw your attention to the fact that you gave this guy a 10-point bonus for wearing clothes, which you generally don't want to do. You want to put it in as -10. -10. Okay. Now I've got at least a couple of scores there. One thing I want to do for this online test, this is the online test one. I'm going to actually delete these, because remember, this is the one where my judges have no idea what the online test was, because they took the online test somewhere else. I know those scores. I've already put them into the system. The judges don't have to deal with that at all, so they'll just leave that one blank. All right, so now I've got a bunch of different Excel scorecards. I'm ready to start doing some importing and see how that goes. Now, when it comes to importing the Excel scorecards, where's my... One sec. The Excel scorecards. In the bright red, this is one of the most important things. Don't forget to do this step. When you're setting up your scoring area, where you'll have 1 or 2 or 3 PCs set up to handle the scoring, what we always suggest is it's fine to just have one PC, one laptop to do the actual CMS and import the scores, and, create scorecards, but have at least 2 other PCs. A separate PC, a laptop somewhere for people to type their scores on, because inevitably somebody is going to come up and say, I don't have a laptop. What am I supposed to do with this USB stick? In Oklahoma, this is where I saw this done best, Oklahoma, several years ago. They had a little room set up on the side, and they would say, well, I appreciate you bringing your scores back, but you didn't put them on the scorecard, so go to that room and sit at one of those 3 laptops and type them in. We are not doing that for you. I don't know, Darren, if you guys are still that strict, but last time I was there, like, yep, we ain't doing it for you. You go over there and sit down. So if you have some laptops set up, you can ask them to just go type the scores in, which saves you tons of time. But then the other really critical thing is have a separate PC that is not on your network, that has the latest antivirus definitions of whatever tool you use, Norton, Weber, whatever you like, and scan those sticks when they come back. Because you are creating USB sticks and setting them out in the wild to be used on some kid's laptop, and who knows what filth is on the laptop, right? So when those sticks come back, just put them in some computer and scan them. Now at National, what we do is we also make a backup copy of the file immediately. Like, so on that separate laptop that's scanning, we'll make a folder and just make a backup copy of every stick as it comes in. So you have one centralized location with all your final files at the end. And you've got them scanned. If you want to print them out, sometimes we'll end up printing those Excel files as they come in, so you have a physical paper backup of everything just in case, right? But at the very least, scan it, because the worst thing you could have happen is somebody puts a terrible virus on a USB stick and brings it to you and gives it to you, and you put it right in your main scoring computer, and you import the virus and your hard drive crashes, and then you're out of luck. And there's nothing anybody can do to fix that. So if you call me and say, Mark, please, you got to fix this, I'm going to say, you got a virus? Well, I can't help you with that. So make sure you have an antivirus platform done. Then when you're scanning them, open those files up and just visually scan them for anything weird. Do I see weird cells that are red or weird cells that are blue, or, do I see a bunch of pink ones where they didn't put a score? Should I put zeros in there? Just have somebody eyeball that stuff and make sure that it looks the way you want it to look. Some of those common things we'll see is, judges copying and pasting their own versions, judges leaving scores out, making their own files. You can always recreate a file and use that copy-paste value as we talked about, and then you're good to go for import. So we've scanned these files. We know they're safe. We're ready to start importing them. That's what the Import Scorecard screen is for. So you click Import Scorecards, and there's a 3-step process along the top to import the scorecard, tabulate the winners, and print a score report. Now you'll notice there's a couple of optional settings you can configure here at the top. By default, the way these are set is generally the way you want to leave them. Auto-tabulate means as I bring in each file, tabulate who the winners are. Of course we want it to do that. The next one says recalculate details. There's a much longer process for retabulating all these analytics about how each kid did compared to every other kid. Like, did you do 80% of the norm? Did you do, were you in the top 10%? A whole bunch of extra calculations. You don't need to do that every time. You only need to do that once at the end, and it takes a while. The more scores you import, the longer it takes. So leave that second one about recalculating the details turned off. The skip notifications is a relatively new feature we added that says if you turn this one on, and we leave it on by default, it doesn't make you click OK all the time. It used to be, if you've used this in the past, every time you'd import a scorecard, it would say, click OK to import a scorecard. And then it would say, click OK to confirm that you're ready to import the scorecard. And then it would say, hey, I already imported the scorecard. Click OK to accept. You'd have to click OK like 4 times for every file. If you leave this off, it doesn't make you click anything. It just brings them in instantaneously, and it's finished. So I'm going to leave that one turned on to skip those notifications. I'm going to click that button at the top left, number 1, Import Scorecard. It'll ask me which scorecard I'd like to import. And I'm going to pick on my E drive. That's just what my USB stick is called. The one I had done a little while ago called, let's try Nurse Assisting. I hit open. It'll think about it. It'll import. If you notice the bottom left corner of your screen, oh, this is saying I've already imported or done manual scores for this one. That's okay. This may be a test I had done earlier. Who knows? But I'm just going to wipe it out. Yes, I want to wipe them out and re-import it. At the bottom left, it'll tell me I successfully imported 7 scores for contestants in Nurse Assisting. Nurse Assisting is the contest that's highlighted. I can click the score report button, and I get an error. That must be a bad one. Let me try another one. I may have got some garbage data in that one. Let me try medical terminology. That's another one we did a minute ago. Jeez, I already got a bunch of junk in here. There we go. Medical terminology. Now, why do I have all these bronzes? My guess is medical terminology is set to be judged to a standard. I didn't even realize that. So, and this is a good thing to talk about. Judged to a standard. Let me go just double check and make sure that's why this is. I'm pretty sure if I go look at medical terminology, yeah, it's set to judge to a standard. I'm going to change that to point ranked. We talked a little bit about this yesterday. I must have set that one up as a test. Point ranked. Let me recalculate that. And now I should be able to see, yeah, there we go, gold, silver, and bronze. We talked briefly about that judge to a standard yesterday. Remember how I was saying some states will use that to avoid giving a gold medal? I only want silver and bronze. That's how we could set this one. And this is my example here anyways, this date, if you can see it, is a perfect example of why you might want to do that. Your judge might come to you and say, this is terrible. My gold medalist only got 78%. I don't think that's good enough to go to national. I don't want him to get a gold medal. I only want to give him a silver medal. We could fiddle with that judge to a standard thing to say, well, if you get between 800 and 1,000 points, you get gold, right? If you get 780 to 800, you get silver. And if you get 770 to 780, you get bronze, right? So I could fiddle with those judge to a standard scores to get 1 silver, 1 bronze, no gold. I don't want to go through all that now because we're in a little bit more of a hurry, but conceptually, does that make sense why you might want to do that? It happens pretty frequently at different states I've seen where a tech chair's frustrated at how poorly the students did and they don't want them to get a gold. So you just fiddle with that judge standard. Go ahead, in the back.
So how would you change that? So like we have a 60% standard. They have to score 60% above to receive a gold. How would you change that?
So in this case, if I don't want this guy to get a gold, it's 780. But if I didn't want him to get gold, I look at this. I've already imported it, and I know I don't want 788 to get gold. All I have to do is go back to that. Which one was that? Now I forgot. No, it was it medical terminology? Okay. Hopefully it was. I will change this on the scoring tab to say judge to standard. And when I set it to judge to standard, by default, it sets them up as 900 to 1,000 is gold, 800 to 899 is silver, 700 to 799 is bronze. I just manually change these to say, well, I know that I wanted 800 to 1,000 is gold, and that guy had 788. I'm going to go like maybe I'll say 780 to 799 is silver. And then the next guy had, I think, 770 maybe to 780, 79. So I can't remember exactly what it was, but something like that. So I just tweak these to get them exactly where I want, so I know I have 1 silver, 1 bronze, and nothing else. Then all I have to do is retabulate it. Retabulate the scores. This is where it asks about the details. I don't want to take the time to build the details, so I'll say no. And then medical terminology, next time when I review it, look at that. A silver.
Policies that we set before the scoring starts, really.
It can be, yes. I've seen it happen both ways. If there's a policy that says you don't get more than, you have to have 60% to get a medal, you can use that strict cut score concept. This one is done after the fact. After I bring them in, they say, I don't want you to get gold. Hold on one sec, Janice. Go ahead.
All of our CNC milling competitions last year, all of the judges didn't want to award gold.
Yep.
Any competitions. And so we just had silver and bronze, and so we had to do this.
Yeah. It works great because then the judges feel like, hey, we gave medals, but we're not, then the students are thinking, hey, I get to go to national. No, you don't. You stink. You're not going to do well, so we're not sending you. So you can fiddle with it that way. Go ahead, Janet.
If you set it to a standard globally at the very beginning, you're taking a chance of getting more than 1 silver medal.
That's
So
right.
You're saying you have to go into each competition to set that.
That's exactly right, because the scores are all over the place, and some scores, 800 might be gold, and others you don't want 800 to be gold. So if you want to use this, you do have to set it one contest at a time based on the results.
But you can, if you have like we have our assessment test, and if they're all 90 or above, they all just go. So that's still a
That's right. That's right. Because you can do this for certain contests. You can say for a certain test, everything above 90 gets gold. And that's exactly what this would be. You set them all to judge the standard. Yep. That seem okay? Did that answer some of the question over here about kind of how it works? Everybody good? All right. So now I've just got a silver and a bronze, and I'm not going to award gold for that one. I'm going to go ahead and import another one. And if you're following along, just pick whichever one you filled some stuff out. Remember I did the aesthetics. I want to be careful not to get aesthetics first pass, because remember that's the file my guy screwed up and I had to recreate it. So I'm going to bring in the other aesthetics one. Calculate that one. Hit the score report for aesthetics. Dang, these are all getting set to. Oh, I have this one set to a cut score, I bet. I don't want that to be the case. There we go. Gold, silver, bronze. So in this case, I have this set as a team event. Remember, this is what we talked about with team events? If your aesthetics model gets a medal, you want to set it up as a team event. And now I'm going to award 2 gold medals, one for the person who did the aesthetics work, and the other person gets a medal for laying there getting a massage or whatever it is. So if you are okay with that, set them as team. If you're not, don't set them as team events. You'll also notice this is where the comments come in. So I see my comments that are brought in from there. Works okay. All right, now let me try the masonry one. If you remember masonry, I had used the online test batch entry for masonry, and I put in these scores that came from the career essentials assessment or maybe from class marker or whatever. I put in these scores myself, and my judge, if I go look at that masonry file, my judge did not put in anything for the online test because he doesn't know the results. Only I know the results. Now, again, the thing that you got to be careful with here is on this Excel spreadsheet, it's telling the judge, hey, look, contestant 1031 won gold. But this is before the written test or the online test is accounted for. So your judge doesn't know who's going to win gold. It tells him here based on their skilled area who did well. But if this contestant 1031 totally bombed the online test, he ain't going to win gold, right? So it keeps an air, a little bit of confusion out there of who's really going to win. So I'm going to import the card for masonry. And when I do that, it's going to give me this message, hopefully. Yeah. This is a different message. Let me clear these out. Now, it appears there are 6 online test batch scores entered for this contest. Do you want to append them to this imported scorecard? And notice it says this will overwrite any online test score that were entered in Excel. So if my judge did put something in Excel, it's going to overwrite what he used and use what I put in because I'm the one that has the real online test results. So I say yes to that. And now for masonry, I can see who my winners are. And in fact, 1031 didn't win gold. Dang it, this is set to, I think we might have a bug here, guys. Because every single contest is getting set to judge to standard. I may have to fix this and send you an updated version. No, it's not that. It's the stupid strict cut score must be turned on. Let me go turn that off. Yeah, there it is. See what happened? Notice when I go, that's where my problem is. When I go back and look at that one for masonry, I'm not getting any medals. Everything is set to no medal. There's no gold, no silver, and bronze because the scores aren't very high, 60%, right? And if I go look at maintenance, I have strict cut scores turned on, and the cut score must be, I don't know, 70% or 80% or something. If you didn't get 70%, you don't get a medal. This I don't like. I do not want to enable that because I'm afraid I won't have any gold medals because my kids aren't doing so great. I'm going to turn that off, retabulate, and now my masonry scores will be there. And you'll notice, remember in the Excel, my judge thought contestant 1031 did great, but he didn't do so great on the written test or the online test, so he gets silver, not gold. Okay? So if you got a couple more, go ahead and import whichever other ones you have there. I kind of think I'm about out. I might have one more. Oh yeah, dental assisting. I want to import that one. Yeah, let me import dental assisting. And dental assisting is one that I had done manual scores for. So Paul, somebody I think was asking a question earlier, can I put in my manual scores and then a week or two later, maybe Keith, that was you asking, can I do it a week or two later, come back and do the finals? Yes, you can. It'll tell me, it appears you've already entered manual scores for 8 competitors in dental assisting. Do you really want to clear out those manual scores and import a new set of detailed scores which came from Excel? Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. I used my manual scores to get my PowerPoint because I was in a hurry. But now a week or two later, I want to get the details so the students can get their scores online. Now, obviously, there's a little bit of risk in that, right? Because if you do manual scores, you may announce gold, silver, and bronze, and you put it all in Excel, and oops, it's slightly different because what the details come out with is different than what the judge told me. Tiny bit of risk there, but it is what it is. There we go. Gold, silver, bronze. Seem okay? Pretty quick and easy. Once you start getting these Excel files back and you've analyzed them, you can just import them very, very quickly. Any questions so far? All right, so let's say I've imported all the ones I have. I kind of don't think I have any more to do here. I think I got all the ones I did. At the end, when I'm totally finished, I want to hit this tabulate winners button on the import scores. And remember this question, it's asked us this a time or two. Do you want to rebuild the details too? This is the part that just takes a little bit of time. It's going to be pretty quick here because we only have a dozen or so contests. But if you have 100 contests, this can take 10 or 15 minutes to process. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to let it think for a minute. Now it's done. The difference is, the reason you only do that once in a while, you notice we've been able to get any of these score reports that tell you who gold, silver, and bronze is. But what you can't get is some of the very, very detailed analytics reporting you get over in the reporting tab. So let's go, once we've done that, let's go back to the main menu and choose reports. And there's a category. Remember from yesterday, we looked at these categories of reports. One of them is scoring. There's a whole bunch of different reports you can run about scoring. You scroll down towards the bottom, there's some that are very detailed. Score detail per contestant by school. Score detail per contestant by school. When I run that one, I'm going to get an alphabetically sorted printout by school. So in this case, Area Career Center comes out first. Childhood Education, Raina Granberry. This is how she did on every single skill area. What the total possible points was. This lowest and highest is comparing her to other competitors. The lowest score for lesson plan was zone 86. The highest was 208. She got 202.5, or the average was 202.5. She got 208, so she did above average. And she ranked third place out of 4 with a total percentage of 80.3%. So these are the details you only get after you click that thing that says, you know, yes, I do want to recalculate all the details. Now this one, I think some of you had mentioned the other day, maybe this is one you print out at your award ceremony and sort of hand out to your judges. To your advisors. This one comes out by school. So you basically have a stack of, here's the 10 pages I give to this school. It's totally fine to do that. There's nothing wrong with it. The only caveat that I can think of you'd run into is if you have a problem with the scoring, you've already given the details out and you may have to retract that, right? If I give this thing to Ben Davis High School and it says, hey, this person was 2 of 4, ranked second place, got a silver medal, and then I find out a week later, oops, the judge screwed up the spreadsheet and missed some scores, blah, blah, blah. I might have to fix that. And now I've got to go back and recreate this and give it back to the school and say, sorry, your guy didn't get second place. He actually got 4th place. So it's a risk. It's a risk, right? If you give this stuff out immediately, you might have that problem. Go ahead.
If you do a manual scoring, did you just print out a sheet with just the manual score, or does it not print one out at all?
That's a good question. I can't remember what it is. I kind of think it doesn't print one out at all. Let's see. Let's go check. We did manual scoring for. Did we do T-shirt design? No. Oh, hang on.
That's what we ran into. We had 2 or 3 manual scorings, and then we had to wait a week or 2 to go back and fix it, and it kept calling, when do we get our detailed scores? And
Yeah, that's definitely a pain. I think maybe prepared speech is one that we did. Let's see.
We we gotta hold that up before we can post them on the internet to show all the, where we can go online, put their date of births in.
Yep. No, you're exactly right. Prepared speech. Let's see if prepared speech shows up there. Score detail per contestant. I can actually use this to pick one contest, I think. Yeah, prepared speech. Oh, that actually works. That's fine. Yeah, look at that. I just get a total. So just that one row. That's better than nothing.
And so when they ask you, we'll just tell them that once we get the details, we'll email it to them.
Yep. That works too. Yep. Now, one of the things Keith's mentioning is getting the scores online. We'll talk about this in a minute, but you can send the scores, your results, to us, and we'll post them online so that anybody can look them up. I can show you where that is. Make sure I got connected to the internet. Yep. If I go to SkillsUSA-register.org/scores, this will take me to a page where I can see medalists, detailed scores, and finalists. The finalist thing is only useful for preliminaries, but I can see the medalists for all these different historical NLSC events, as well as a whole bunch of state events. So like Keith in Alabama, he's been sending us scores, even for regional competitions back in the 2015, 2016. So anybody historically can go see Alabama back in 2016, Northeast District competitions, who won in carpentry 3, 4, 5 years ago. As long as people have been sending me. We never archive it. So as long as people have been sending it to me, like Keith's been doing it since 2016, Florida since 2017, Indiana 2000. Look at that, Indiana 2012. You might get a prize, Kelly, for going way. Oh, she already left. Well, tell her she got a prize.
2011, I saw.
2011. Yeah. Oh, there you go. Forget Kelly. Dennis gets a prize. Dennis and Chuck, Maryland, back in 2011. So we never get rid of this stuff. It's out there forever. But the other thing we need to look at here is if I go back and look at the detailed scores, like I want to know, well, how did that kid do in each particular area? Again, I can go to Alabama or whatever state I want to go to. New York, 2012. Automated manufacturing, drafting. The students have to know these two things. What was your contestant number and what's your date of birth? The date of birth is specifically to block students from snooping around and seeing some other kids' detailed scores, right? So if you just think about where this is going to head, what's going to happen is your students are going to call you and say, I forgot my contestant number. My advisor who typed me into the site didn't put the right date of birth. It's kind of a pain. So one of the things you want to do at the end of this, at the very least, is generate one of these reports called, I think it's called under state reports. I think there's one called master list by master contestant list. I think it is. By state and contest. No, there's one called master. Dang it. Yeah, this is a good one. Master contestant list by training program. So this gives me a detailed printout of each school, A.K. Smith Career Center, in the criminal justice program. Here were the contestants. Here's their contestant number that they competed with. And here's the date of birth that was given, right? This may not be their real date of birth, but when their advisor put them in on the site, this is the date of birth he gave. So it's really handy to give this to your advisor so 3 weeks from now when they want to go look up their detailed scores, they're not calling you saying, what date of birth did I put for that kid? They have this printout. And of course, if you do start getting a bunch of calls, particularly from one particular school, like I get a whole bunch of calls from this area career center, what I can do with this report is say, Well, I want to pick that area career center, and I want to generate that report just for them, and I'm going to send them a PDF. And now I can say, look, here's your data. Go look it up yourself. Don't keep calling me looking for the data. So those are good reports to print out and either give them or email them at the end of the conference, so they at least know what happened. The other one you can print out, I think there's another one under scoring. It's not, maybe not the details, but there's one called scores per contestant by state with comments. No, that's not going to be by. Here it is, scores per contestant by school. This is the one. Scores per contestant by school. This one is, got a page break at every school, so you can say, all right, give these printouts to this school, and the next printouts to the next school, Calumet, Covington, Elkhart Career Center, so they can see how did they do. It's not the details of every single skilled area, but at least I can see, hey, this guy won second, this guy won fourth, what was the percentage? At least they have some information. And then notice it does include their contestant number and their date of birth as well. Okay? So you can poke around there and see there's probably several other reports you may want to look at and decide whether you want to hand them out to your advisors or not. If you need to mail prizes later on, there's one called Winner Details with Address and School. So the people who won gold, silver, and bronze, this will tell you by contest what is the kid's home address and what is the school's address, so that you can, mail them prizes if you need to, or maybe you got an industry sponsor who wants to know which kids to hire because they did great, whatever. All right?
Now, Mark, sometimes the home address, I have to delete that because I can't release it.
Yep.
So if
Yep.
there's a report in there that did not have a home address, then
One like this that didn't have home address?
yeah.
Okay.
Under A, you can't release it.
So maybe we call that one Winner Semi-Details.
It has the school address.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay. All right. So now yeah, go ahead.
There is a way, I'm not saying it's illegal, whenever they come back for their prizes, as long as you do not take the registration data and issue it, they can fill out a certificate where they want the prizes sent to, and that company gets that. So
They can, but
you're not
as an
releasing it.
organization, I can't.
Right. Yep. All right, so back under the scoring category, there's one or two other things we want to look at. We're kind of getting ready for our award presentation, and we want to run a couple of other reports. One is called Award Presentation Order with Contestants. There's really two of those, Award Presentation Order Full. This gives you a list of what the sequence is for your award presentation with every contest, and then the other one is only contests that have contestants in them. This just tells you sequentially what the award presentation sequence is going to be. Now, you probably need to set this up. In this sample data that I've given you, it's already set up, but I want to show you where we can set that. I'm also just going to notice on mine, sequentially, I have American Spirit first and Audio Radio second. Under maintenance, if I kind of close some of this stuff down and get back to the maintenance screen, on the maintenance screen in that contest functions tab, there's a award ceremony PowerPoint section there on the right. And this is where we'll go to create the PowerPoint presentation here in a moment. But this is where we can also set the award sequence sort order. By default, I think when we first send you the data, there is no sort order. They're all blank. So you need to set one. And different states have different ways they like to do it. Most commonly we see as random, like they just randomize the contest and they all come out whatever sequence. If you choose random and then hit reassign sequence, it'll ask if we're sure, yes, we're sure. It'll just randomize them. And now I can just click that little button that says sequence report and see, yep, now advertising design is not first, or American Spirit, it switched them around. So you can randomize those, or you can have them done alphabetically. If you do them alphabetically, they'll come out so that whatever is alphabetically first, 3D visualizations first, and welding sculptures last. Some states do it alphabetically. Some states do it by division, and some states by category. Division is like all the college first and all the high school. And by category would be like all the leadership first and then all the skilled and technical second. So a couple different options. I'm going to set mine to random and reassign the sequence. And then that sequence report, if I go back to reporting, sequence award presentation order with contestants, this will tell me my presentation ought to come out. Crime scene is going to be first, firefighting is going to be second, motorcycle service is going to be third, right? This may be one you hand out to a few people ahead of time so they know which sequence prizes need to be lined up in, if people are going to be coming from the stage to the back to get their picture taken, you know, what do I want to sequence them for photography or whatever. Okay. Then there's another report here called Award Ceremony Scores Backstage and Award Ceremony Scores for Stage Announcer. Those are just two slightly different formats of the same thing. The one called Award Ceremony Scores for Stage Announcer just gives you a very large printout, one contest per page, listed in sequence of bronze, silver, gold, because when the PowerPoint presentation comes on, it's going to be presented first bronze, then silver, then gold. So this is sequenced to be read from the top down. And it comes out in the same sequence. So medical is first, automotive second. These are the ones that I have scores for anyway. Okay? The other one, award ceremony scores backstage, same concept. It's just smaller font and you get a whole bunch of them per page. So if you want to hand this to the guys behind the stage who are lining up the prizes and saying, okay, here's who's going to show up for the bronze medal, here's going to show up for silver medal, like that. They can hand the prizes out. Now, one thing we really like to do with this one is print this out and give it to somebody to just eyeball, right? There's only 2 pages here, so it's pretty easy to look at. But I just like to eyeball this and make sure there's nothing weird. In other words, what if I happen to see 2 bronzes? That might be okay if I have it judged to a standard, or it might be a big problem. Or what if I look at this and I don't see a medal? I think we had one like that, didn't we? No, maybe I changed. No, there it is, medical terminology. I'm looking at this thinking, wait a minute. Why am I not giving a gold medal? And then I remember, oh yeah, remember medical terminology? They did terrible and they decided they didn't want gold.
Mark, the first year we used it.
So a good idea to review that and just kind of eyeball it and make sure there's nothing out of whack. One other thing that you may find handy, award winner sign-in sheets. This one can be handy. It's like 1 page per contest that basically says who won and to get the students who won to sign for picking up their prizes, right? So you have proof, hey, this guy Jasmine Mathis really did pick up her first place prize for childhood education. You know she got it because she signed on the dotted line. You're not worried about, oh, where's my prize? Somebody else took it. You got her signature. Not a bad idea.
That's a new form.
Yep. And then thought I had one more cool one that was new. Now I don't see it, but I probably should have told you about this one beforehand. There's a report here under scoring called Contests Missing Final Scores. Of course, right now it's going to be really full. There's lots of contests because we've just been playing with this, right? But you do not want to generate your PowerPoint presentation until this is blank, right? Because these guys you don't have the scores for. You're not going to get any, but no medals are going to get awarded, nothing in the PowerPoint. So what we generally do at nationals and at any state I go to, or me or James or whoever goes to, we make sure and run this, every 30 minutes or so as you're getting down to the wire. Let's run and see what's missing. This will get smaller and smaller and smaller, and eventually be down to 2 contests, and you got 2 hours till your award presentation, and you're frantically calling those 2 guys saying, what the heck? We're waiting on your contest. Bring your scores, because you're the holdup. So this gives you that last-minute list to call on.
Do you recommend that we run the problem report before the generating some of those reports as well? Just to make sure that anything changed?
Yeah, it didn't hurt to, just in case you had something that was missing. One of them that we've sometimes run into problem, I was mentioning about schools. Schools or organizations without a city, there shouldn't be any on that, because if your PowerPoint presentation tries to include a city and you don't have a city, that can cause a problem. All right, so we've run a bunch of those contests. We've run our reports, the score reports. We've analyzed it. We've spot checked as many things as we can. We think we're about ready to generate a PowerPoint presentation. Any questions so far about the various score reports?
You said something earlier about how to break a tie.
Yeah, how to break a tie. Let me create a tie and show you how we would break one of those right quick. That's a good question. If I go pick one of these contests where I have a few. Oh, not that one. Architectural drafting. This one will be perfect. I only got a few things in here. I'm not even going to worry about the judges for this one. Architectural drafting. Let me just cram some scores in here so we can see what happens if we have a tie for gold. Now I've got a whole bunch of ties, but let me just fix a couple of these. Okay, so now I have these two contestants that are tied for gold, right? And I see that in the Excel, but maybe my judges aren't paying attention or they don't notice, or maybe your policy at your state is tell the judges, it's fine to bring me ties. I'll break the ties here. A lot of states say, don't bring me a tie. Look for this. If you see a tie, you break it. You're the judge. You know better than me what to do. But if they bring you a tie, we're going to go ahead and see what happens if I import one of those with a tie. So I'm going to go back to architectural drafting. And let me check one thing. Notice on my scorecard for architectural drafting, those are my standards, 2 clothing penalties, and then I have 2 tiebreakers. One is, what's the SkillsUSA knowledge test? Or maybe some written exam or whatever. And the second tiebreaker is, you just pick some item. In this case, they said, well, whoever got the most points in floor plan or dimensions, that's who wins, right? So they've decided ahead of time, which skill area is most important to break my tie? So when I go and import that one, import architectural drafting, when I hit the score report button, now this is something you kind of need to be looking for. And this is probably something we could improve and make it pop up some big warning. But when you print this report, it becomes obvious just by looking at, wait a minute, why does this say gold twice? Because there's a tie. Now there's a report we can run that over here under scoring, it says report ties. And this one would also show up on it. So that tie one is another report that's a good idea to just run before you do your PowerPoint to see. I need to break this tie. So I know these are the two guys that got the tie, 1,003 and 1,010. There's a button on here that says add tiebreakers. I'm looking at architectural drafting and I hit add tiebreakers. What that does is it tells me here that tiebreaker rows were added. Now find the winning contestant and add 1 point. Now I know just based on looking at that the SkillsUSA test was what was the most important thing. So I look at the contestants. It was, which ones was it? 1,003 and 1,010. Those are the 2 guys, right? So I'll look at those and say, all right, 1,003 on the written exam got 43 points. If you can kind of see that. Yeah, I got 43 points. And 1,010, rats, he got 43 points too. All right. So now I say, all right, well, the second thing they said was the floor plan. This guy got 233. Oh, man, this guy got 233 too. So the third tiebreaker is always the quarter test. You flip a quarter, whoever wins gets gold. Now, it's very rare for this to happen, right? You go 2 or 3 things, but eventually you got to say, look, guys, help me break the tie. Which guy did better? You compare the few things. So what I would do is this. Assuming one guy did better on one of the tests, I know in this case didn't, but I'm going to say contestant 1010 did a little bit better on the floor plan. I'm going to give him 0.5. I just type in here half a point. I generally don't want to go, hey, see you guys, all the best. I don't want to give him a whole point because that might cause another tie, right? I want to give him half a point. So I just typed in there 0.5, retabulate the winners. And now when I look at the score report, I have 1 gold, 1 silver, and 1 bronze, and what was the 4th place dropped off. Okay? I should have planned that a little better since it very, very, very happens that way. I think only one time at Nationals have we ever had to use the quarter test. We never use the quarter test. I'm kidding. All right. So we've done just about everything. We've broken our tie. We've got a bunch of scores in here. I'm retabulating my details just to make sure I'm good. Now I'm ready to make a PowerPoint presentation, okay? We've printed out all the reports we want. To make the PowerPoint presentation, all we have to do is go under maintenance. I'm going to close down the PowerPoint that I'm using here for this training thing because I don't want to get it confused with 2 versions of PowerPoint running. On the Contest Functions tab, there's a little question mark button here at the bottom right for the award ceremony PowerPoint. It'll kind of explain how you do this, how it works. All you have to do is choose which template you want to use. Remember when I sent you the zip file, in that zip file, there were these 2 different PowerPoint files. If I look in that SkillsCMS sample zip, there was normal and wide, the SkillsCMS template PowerPoint normal and wide. You see how this projector is shaped like an old style TV? You know what I mean? It's a 4x3. And some projectors are more like a widescreen TV. They're 9x16. You know what I'm saying? That's the difference between normal and wide. This is a normal projector. So you just got to ask your AV guys, whoever's running your audio visual for your award ceremony, hey guys, which kind of projector are you bringing? A 4x3 normal one or a widescreen 16x9 projector? And what I do here is pick, I want to choose the location of my PowerPoint template, SkillsCMS template.pptx. I'm going to scroll around on my C drive. It's in that same folder we put everything else. Remember on the C drive in that SkillsCMS folder, I have 2 PowerPoints. SkillsCMS template normal and SkillsCMS template wide. You just figure out which one you want. Since I'm using this kind of screen, I'm going to choose normal. Select that PowerPoint template, and then just click the button to generate the award presentation. It'll tell you to make sure you know what you're doing, make sure you've run all the reports, make sure you're happy with all that. It may give you some other warning about, hey, you've only got 10, you've only got 60, it may give you some warning, and then it should just do this. You'll kind of see it thinking for a minute, and it'll kind of beep when it's done. And back in PowerPoint, in Access, it'll give you a message saying it's created it, it saved it. There, mine just beeped. If I go back to Access, it's saying I'm finished. The medalist presentation is now complete. The award ceremony should be open, and here's where it has been saved. I may need to save it again, like on a USB stick or wherever I'm going to send it to somebody. But that's it. And that PowerPoint presentation will be just like the one we use at Nationals, where as you go down, it's got the gold, silver, and bronze.
Is there a way that you can show the, instead of saying team A, it can actually have this team names on it?
Yeah, great question. Great question. I don't even know if I have any teams on mine. I thought I did one that had teams.
And you can go in and edit this after you get it. You need to make changes or add more slides or add state officer, district officer.
So there's your teams.
Yep, that's right. That's right. So It's just a PowerPoint deck at this point, so you can edit it, and you'll definitely want to edit it, right? To like maybe there's an upper and lowercase. Some schools have a weird upper and lowercase thing that'll happen. You got to fix. You might want to put in there's no introductory slide. There's no wrap-up slide. There's no thank you slide for your sponsors. You'll want to go in and make some changes to it. Notice to the team question, mine did come out with the team names. Yours might not have. I'll show you where that is. The other thing I want you to notice, since this is a state event, I don't necessarily need to show the city and state of each school because we're all in the same state, right? We all know wherever Belmont High School is, everybody knows, oh, Belmont, that's in Leesburg or that's in Chantilly or whatever, right? At National, we want to change the setting so you do include the city and state because everybody is from different states. So those are a couple of other settings we can change. Those are also set under maintenance. So I just created it once. Let me go to that first tab, that database utilities tab. Couple of options here. I turned on the option for include teams. That's how I got the team names to appear. If you turn that off, it won't include the team names. It'll just say team A, team B. You won't have the kids' names. And then the other option is about include city state. If you want it to show the city and state, you turn that one on. And then next time you generate it, you'll get a different result that has something different in it. And you may end up having to try it a time or two with various settings to see. If I've turned both of those settings on, include teams and include city state, it's probably going to work because I'm doing mine for a 4x3 presentation. But if you're doing it for a widescreen presentation, it might be too tight. Might not look right. Yeah, see here how in a widescreen, this bottom one, in fact, here it's too big. Notice what happened here? Team A, silver, bronze, it just got too big. It got split to the next thing. I kind of need to go through and say, rats, I need to move this, cut it, put it up here. It kind of needs to go here, and I may need to squeeze it a little bit. It just gets too many rows. Did it work? If you were able to get a PowerPoint presentation, you guys in the back, the 64-bit team, nice. Yeah, how about that? 64-bit in the back, they did it. That's awesome. That means we're good to go.
Mark, can you go back to that word power, certain word PowerPoint slide? Yeah.
Yep.
What if we are not randomly generated order? We have a preset order.
Good question. So if you have a preset order, what I would suggest is set them alphabetically. That way they'll be sequentially in an alphabetic sequence so you can at least see them easier. And then here's the place to do that. When I set mine to alphabetic, watch what happens. If I go to contest list, the contest list will be an alphabetic sequence of my contests. And notice this award sequence column. It has set 110, 120, 130. We generally do it by tens. You can set this in whatever sequence you want by changing this number. So if in your state you're saying, no matter what, the first contest we always call is broadcast news, make it number 10. And I always suggest skipping by 10 so you have wiggle room. And then the next one we want to do is carpentry, so you make that 20. And make them both 20, secondary and post-secondary, because you want them to come out together, unless you have your separate college and high school. And then the third one you want is whatever. You just set those to whatever you want. Motorcycle service would be 30. You set them however you want. That's also where, let me go back and reset mine to random, because one of the other very, very common things we hear is when I run this sequence report, now that I've done them randomly, notice how the third one is Quiz Bowl. Maybe in my state, Quiz Bowl was a huge contest, and I got 100 kids, and I don't want it called third, because as soon as I call the Golden Medalist in Quiz Bowl, hundreds of kids are going to get up and run out, right? Like, oh, that's all I care about. I'm going out for dinner. So you can change this and say, I don't want Quiz Bowl to be 130 sequenced. I want it to be down here after, I don't know, let's put it after plumbing, right? So I'm going to just change it to say Quiz Bowl instead of 130. I'm going to make it, plumbing is 1590. I'm going to make it 1595. So I'll go here and say, let me find Quiz Bowl. Whoops. Let me find Quiz Bowl and change its sequence to, instead of 130, 1595. I've manually adjusted that. Now, next time I go run that, I don't want to resequence. I don't want to resequence it. I just want to run the sequence report. And now I'll see Quiz Bowls way down here towards the bottom. So you can tweak it and set your contest toward the end, or if you have a special one you need to do early, move it up early, however you need to do it. Okay?
You also have to consider your photo room too. You don't want to get two large groups going in.
Yeah.
In the hallway.
That's right. If you got a whole bunch of kids on like a Quiz Bowl and opening and closing ceremonies, right? Those both have large groups of kids that are winners. You may want to spread those out so you don't get a roadblock somewhere. Okay, so we've generated our PowerPoint presentation. We've saved it. We put that on a USB stick, or we email it, whatever you need to do. Get it out to your guys who are going to do the audio visual. You've printed out numerous copies of this report. If I go back to reports, scoring, award presentation scores for stage announcer. Remember, this is the one the guy will read from. It comes out in that same sequence, right? Bronze, silver, gold. There's another one called award presentations. Oh, this was the one I was thinking about. This is kind of a cool one. Award presentation slides with contestants. This one comes out just basically a single page for each contest that they might, what I've seen some states do is use this for the photography booth, right? You got the kids going to the photography booth. They say, here, hold this when we take your picture so we know you're the criminal justice winners. So they can print this thing out, and it comes out in the sequence that your award sequence is coming. So you know, as the kids are coming off stage, here's a stack of paper. Grab the paper, hold it for the picture, move on. Award presentation slides. I don't know why it says with contestants, because it doesn't really have contestants on it. Oh, I know what that means. That's because it's only going to print the ones where there are contestants. So if there was a contest that didn't have any contestants, it doesn't come out. That's what that means.
Is there a way to make something like that with a first, second, and third place?
You mean different than this one? Whoop. That's effectively.
Yeah, different than that. So like a big paper that says, oh, I'm cosmetology, I won first place, and you hand it to the winner.
Oh.
We've been having troubles with like handing out prizes, so we want to be able to give the winner your cosmetology first place. We'll give this to the person.
Oh, yeah.
Prize.
That's an interesting idea. Let me see if we can make something like that.
We've done a signature thing, but we've had so many people just steal a bunch of prizes.
Yeah,
It's
would
like
never happen.
ridiculous. So we just want to make sure there's more ways we can do that. Or they'll go back and they'll get the post-secondary and secondary prizes for first.
Right. Oh, you mean all these prizes are for me?
Really?
Nice. All right. So we're effectively done, right? And the next step is how do we get these scores out online? How do we get them posted out online? We've done our award presentation. We've successfully had all our advisors have come and gotten their handouts, and they've gone back, and now they want to go online and get their scores. There's differing opinions about how soon you should do this. You know, it's always a debate where the advisors and kids and parents want to see the scores that night. I want to go online that night and see my scores. Some states, and at NLSC, we try and get them turned around right away as soon as possible because people are clamoring for it. The drawback is, inevitably, you're going to have problems. Somebody put the wrong score in or somebody didn't provide a score, whatever. You have to have changes. So as long as you're okay with letting people know we might have to change things, you can send us these immediately. Other states say, you know what, wait till next weekend. Our award ceremony's tonight. Next weekend, give us a few days to just make sure everything's okay, and then we'll post the scores online. It's up to you when you do it. But under maintenance, same exact spot where we created the award ceremony, PowerPoint. Up at the top right, there's a little section that says Winner Website Reporting. And again, there's a little question mark there. You can click, it'll describe how this works. It's basically just going to create a set of Excel files. There are 4 of them. It will create 4 Excel files, and you email those files to us. This has got a little bug in it. It says 3 files, but there's actually 4. I got to fix that. You just basically choose where you want to put them. What's the path where we want to put these? I'm going to put mine on the C drive under SkillsCMS. Just pick that folder, hit Export Scores. It says, are we sure we're ready? Yes, we are. There are 11 contests. This is just a warning to make sure you know you're going to get 11 contests. If you were expecting 20, there's a problem. Probably you didn't ever retabulate the details. Like if you think, I did 20 scores, why is there only 11? You didn't do that retabulate details thing. Yep, 11 is what we're expecting. It'll create 4 Excel files. It'll tell me to send them to support@skillsusa-register.org. If I go look at those, they're on my C drive under SkillsCMS. There they are. 2053 medalists, 2053 ranking, 2053 score details, 2053 score date of birth. Doesn't matter what's in those files. It's just a whole bunch of data. It's basically a data dump. You send all 4 of those files to me. We will put them on this site. This is the place where they'll show up. Remember we talked about this a few minutes ago where you can go here and see the medalists? And if you have your date of birth, you can see the score details. Good? If you're not comfortable putting those online, no big deal. Just don't send me the files. You can print out, send PDFs, whatever you want. Yep, that's right. And those files are pretty small, so you can just put them in one email and fire them off. Yep. All right. Now, the only other thing you need to do, and we talked about this earlier, after your event, if you haven't archived your conference, now's the time to do it. Remember online, we talked about archiving your conference. If you haven't done it yet, after your event is the right time to do that. All right, now thinking back about what we've seen this morning, creating the Excel files, importing them, what kind of questions come up about this general process?
Using prelims.
Using prelims. Yeah, so I do have a slide about that, and we can run through that. I'll show you how that works. Let me see if there's any other simpler questions before we do that, because it's a little tiny bit tedious. Not bad, but any other simpler questions aside from the prelim question?
Where did you get that medallion, medalist page?
The medalist page? Oh, you mean the website? This one?
Yep.
So SkillsUSA-register.org/scores. And also, I think if you just go to SkillsUSA.org, I can't remember exactly where it is on the main site, but I know there's a, maybe under competitions, SkillsUSA Championships. I know he has a link to it here somewhere. Medal, I know it's somewhere. I don't know exactly where, but I know there's a link to it somewhere on here. On SkillsUSA.org. Oh, they won't be there yet. They won't be there because remember, that's the part where you got to dump them out to these 4 Excel files and email them to me. There's no direct connection from the CMS right to the website. So at the end of your conference event, you'll go to this page here, export those 4 files, and just email them to me and say, Mark, here's my files. I'm ready for you to post them.
Yeah, you click on the question mark and it tells you.
Yeah, and we'll post them generally within 24 hours. If you're in a real hurry, email me and say, hey, Mark, I'm closing my event Friday night. I really need them up Friday night. We'll do whatever we can to help you get them up Friday night. I don't think we limit it per se, but I think you'd only see 3. I mean, you could type more than 3, but it's going to round it off to 3 basically. Yeah, they do a very detailed thing in welding for sure. Okay, So preliminary. And remember, it's right at 11 o'clock, and I know we're trying to wrap up. If you guys need to go, Kelly, is the lunch ready? Okay. So if you need to go, grab a lunchbox, help yourself take off. Don't forget, in all these documents, the useful training one, any of these documents you have, my email is at the very bottom of all of them. So if you have questions, you can email me. Let me talk about the preliminary thing. Actually, let me come back to the preliminary thing in just 1 minute. I promise we'll do it. But I just want to run through one or two other quick things here before, because some people I know may need to leave. This slide about posting your scores online, we talked about. You email me those. That'll be good. Ideas and suggestions. Two other things just to review. Setting up the SkillsCMS on a network. So a lot of states are getting more and more sophisticated with wanting to run the CMS on multiple computers at the same time. This works better at an actual conference event than it does at like a State Department of Education, right? Because if you got people spread out in a bunch of different buildings, this doesn't work so well. But if you're in one building, like at your conference event, and you want to hook it up on 3 or 4 PCs, 10 PCs, whatever, it's really not a big deal to do. At NLSC, we'll put 6 or 10 or 12 PCs together on a network, and it works fine. You need to have a network guy come hook it up. You want to have, 3 or 4 computers all tied via a physical wired network. The last thing you want to do is be in a hotel with Wi-Fi and assume you can use hotel Wi-Fi to network computers. It ain't going to work. You want to have a physical wired hub, 5 or 6 computers wired into it, and somebody connect that all up for you. But once you get that set up, it's very simple. Remember how we have a programs and a data, and you connect the data? As long as the data is shared on one of the PCs, doesn't matter, just one of the PCs is sharing that data file, the rest of them connect to it, no big deal. Works fine. The only caveat to be aware of is when you're importing the scorecards. Remember when we talked about doing the importing page? This one here, importing. Generally, you want to just import from one of the PCs because the importing mechanism is pretty intensive, and you'll come up with weird errors if 2 of you are trying to do it at the same time. But editing data, importing, whatever, adding people, whatever, that's fine. So that's networking. If you're curious about that, let me know. We can help. I can't help you set up a network because I am not a networking guy. But if you have a network set up, we can help you get it configured to share across a network. And then the only other last thing to run over before we go to the preliminary thing is about support options. So lots of training videos. Remember on that PDF that I sent you, the useful training links, there's a whole bunch of training videos here. All links to YouTube or to Join Me recordings. You can watch those anytime. Also, in terms of support, there's 3 different levels of support. If you feel like, man, the training videos are great, but I need more, you can email us anytime. We'll help anytime via email. And some of you know I'll answer emails at 2 in the morning sometimes. It's totally fine, email anytime. If you need help, if you're like, man, I'm in the middle of my conference and I got to call Mark and spend 2 hours on the phone with him, we will help you. You'll just get a bill for it. The national office doesn't support unlimited phone calls for every state conference, right? So if you need help, it's totally fine. Don't panic and think, I can't do this on my own. Call. It's not a problem. You're just going to end up getting a bill for it. And then finally, the remote support options. If you want somebody to come to your site and help you, we can do that as well. You should have all gotten an email already this past week with a document. Just pick whichever support option you want, email it back to me. If you don't remember getting that, let me know, I'll send it. Just a simple Word document that we sent to all state directors. It says, pick your support option for this year. Do you need us on site or not? Not a big deal. Just let us know. All right? Okay, now the preliminary thing. So preliminaries, remember, if you need to go, it's totally fine. Just see if you can quietly sneak out, and we'll see you next time. For preliminaries, the concept is we do 2 Excel files. And I think I had this set up with action skills or advertising design. Let me see. Maybe it was advertising design. Yeah, for mine, it's advertising design because I got a whole bunch of people. So this is a good example where I have 15 contestants And advertising design is going to take me a long time to run because I got to do a whole bunch of detailed stuff. It just takes too long. So what I want to do is run 3 rooms of advertising design scoring at the same time, 5 kids in each room, right? I'm going to have 5 simultaneous rooms going on with, I'm sorry, 3 simultaneous rooms with 5 kids in each room. So to do that, for advertising design, I go to the Standards tab and set Preliminary Round Configuration. And what that does is 2 things. It gives me this rank row, which basically is saying, how many students do you want to have from each room? I've got 3 rooms of 5 kids. I kind of only want the top 2. So I'm going to change this to 2 and 2. Now I'm going to pick the top 2 kids from each preliminary round room, and they're going to go to the final round. So I'm literally going to run this contest multiple times. Once in 3 separate rooms for the preliminary round, and then I'm going to do the whole thing again for a final round. Conceptually sound okay? I'm going to want the top 2. The second thing it did when I clicked this preliminary round configuration is it set up a new row called the room number row. Now watch what happens when I export this advertising design to the USB stick. It's going to give me the Excel file, and it's going to ask me, do you want the preliminary scorecard? Yes, I do. And when I get that preliminary scorecard, and I go look at it, it should be on my, come on. The file already exists. Yes, I want to replace it. There we go. So now if I go look at my USB stick drive V, I have advertising design, S, and if I open it, I'll see there's this room number row at the top. Shoot, I have 2 room number rows. How did I get that? Oops, I got to delete one of these. There may be a bug there. Let me recreate it. Hold on one sec. All right, there we go. So now let me go look at that again. Advertising design. I use this room number row at the top to indicate which students compete in which room. And you can use whatever wording you want here. Like some people use like room A, room B, and room C. Some people put in a room number like room 508 and 509. Some people put in the name of a person, you know, the Washington room and the Lincoln room. Doesn't matter. The idea is I'm putting in here which room these people are in. These 3 are in room A. The next ones are in room B. And the next ones are in room C. What the heck? There we go. A, B, and C. Those are the rooms I'm going to be using. And now I'll just put in the scores that go with them for each student. All right. Now watch what happens when I import that. When I import that scorecard, and I grab advertising design, I'm not going to be able to get a score report. Because when I hit the score report button, I think, yeah, maybe that's it. Let me try it again now. This test database has got some icky data in it. It's not helping my cause here. Okay, so the preliminary thing is going to take me a little more time to demonstrate. I'm really sorry. I know we're running short of time. Let me show you 2 things about the preliminary. If you go back to this screen and look at this button for preliminary round configuration, I've got a very specific, very precise, perfectly done video walkthrough on YouTube that doesn't have this icky test data in it. I'm sorry, the demo system is just not good for this. But if you just click that link, you can watch a video of exactly how this preliminary thing works with a perfectly tuned set of data, and it works fine. It walks through step by step exactly how to do it. It's one of the longer training videos because unfortunately the preliminary concept is probably the most complicated thing about using this thing. It works well, it's just a little bit tedious to go through.
Use the SkillsCMS system.
I was hoping my demo data would be better than this, but
Preliminary
it's a mess.
contests are typically done.
But if you just watch this video, I think it'll explain. If it doesn't, if you're like, Mark, I still don't get it, we'll go through it.
Rooms at the same time
Okay?
or during a
Bad data, sorry about that. Okay. Go ahead, couple questions in the back. Okay. Okay, let me hold off on that. Any other, go ahead.
I couldn't generate a PowerPoint from alphabetical or a contest list, but it would for random. I could do it for random, but I go to alphabetical, it gives me a result.
So let me do, so my guess is it's just a recalculation thing. Let's try it. If I reassign the sequence to alphabetic, and then I look at the score report, it should be done alphabetically. Yep, that looks right. Now I need to go back.
Mine doesn't populate a contest list.
It doesn't populate a contest list?
No here. Then I go sequence report, it's blank. But random, I get them all.
Okay, it's probably bad data. Hold on, let me come back and I'll take a look at your data. It's got to be bad data that's causing that, but I can dig into it. Other questions, other suggestions, other needs? I know we're quickly losing everybody here. I'm sorry about that.
You're not losing us.
Does anybody have any, I'm going to come back to the 64-bit thing in a second and test that out because I tested it on mine and it worked. I'm going to see if we can figure out what's going on with yours. And maybe we'll use my data here just in case. I also am just going to tabulate one other thing. Does anybody have any other questions you want to ask or suggestions, things you wish this thing did that we haven't talked about it doing yet? Thank you. We good? All right, let me retabulate this and see if I can get a PowerPoint deck to come out in alphabetic order. I think I can, but we'll double check it here. Hopefully this will work okay. Yeah, it looks like the alphabetic thing is okay on mine, so it must be something there with that one. I'll have to double check that one. It did okay? Okay. All right.